Chapter 61 An Accident in Actual Combat 2. This was especially so since he had not activated the corresponding genetic base point. It was extremely difficult to get started. Based on the introduction of the secret technique, it was impossible for someone to learn it in half a month. It was more common for someone to not be able to learn it in a few months or even years. This was why students from the Mystery Branch's School of Superb had to activate the corresponding genetic base points before they were accepted into the college. Otherwise, wouldn't they be completely useless if they could not learn it for a few years after being accepted into the School of Superbs? Mr. Wenshao shouldn't know that I can activate my genetic base points at will, right? Suddenly, Zhu Tui felt that Mr. Wenshao's kindness toward him today seemed to be tinged with ill intentions. Zhu Tui's ability to sense genetic base points through his illusory introspection should be able to reduce the difficulty by a little. However, it would not be as easy to learn as from the version 4.9 of Mind Concentration Foundation forging technique that Xiaozu gave. After going through the list, Zhu Tui placed the 5 superb type cultivation technique projection cards to the side. He would consider that when he had a large amount of money in the future and had mastered version 4.9 of the Mind Concentration Foundation forging technique. If he knew everything, he would be lacking in every way. It was better to specialize in the same skill. Just like in Xiaozu. I should focus on training. At this stage, I should focus on training my mind power and the consciousness forging technique. I should be able to easily activate the 10th genetic base point of the first level of the Mind Concentration Foundation forging technique tonight, right? The night's training went smoothly. However, the level E energy restoration elixir consumed a lot of energy. He could use up 2 bottles in one night. If his mind power increased again in a few days, he might even spend 3 bottles in one night. Zhu Tui smelled a faint fragrance the moment he woke up in the morning. It was the aroma of sandalwood mixed with the scent of fresh flowers. Luo Murong had already woken up. The door was half open. The sandalwood scent was coming from Luo Murong's room. He could vaguely see that Luo Murong was in a horse stance. He was training. Extreme branch. There was also an incense burner that was emitting green smoke. Where did the fragrance of the flowers come from? He searched everywhere. Zhu Tui found 3 large bouquets of beautiful flowers at the entrance of the dormitory. Zhu Tui was elated. Did someone send him flowers? Gong Ling. It could only be her. As for Cheng Mo, Zhu Tui shook his head at the shuddering scene. There was a message slip in the bouquet. The smile on Zhu Tui's face disappeared after he scanned through the message. For my dear brother Murong. Good morning, young Master Luo. I hope that your mood today is as good as the sun. Brother Murong, the flowers are like me. They are willing to fall into your hands. Zhu Tui was speechless. He was fed with spoonfuls of sweetness so early in the morning. And there were 3 packets of it. However, it was not appropriate to place the flowers at the door. Zhu Tui wanted to bring them in. Don't move it, just leave it there. If you are willing to bring it in, you will be in charge of such matters in the future, Luo Murong said from within the room. Zhu Tui was speechless. HMPH, do you think I'm willing to move it? I'm just a hard-working bee. He washed his face, brushed his teeth, ate, and went to class. Zhu Tui lived a rather regular life for the next 3 weeks. He attended classes, ate, and trained. He went to the Genetic Research Institute on the weekends to be a garbage mover. Then, Zhu Tui became a long-term cleaner in dorm 1604. It was Luo Murong's first week of cleaning. Zhu Tui had only glanced at it but did not look closely. However, it was really clean. However, Luo Murong managed to find many problems with Zhu Tui during his second week of cleaning. Such as the windowsill had not been wiped. Such as the surface of the toilet had not been washed. So, Zhu Tui was re-elected. The 3rd week had basically passed. However, Luo Murong still managed to find a few faults in his hygiene. He should have no problems becoming a cleaning staff in his 4th week. Zhu Tui felt a little cheated. But he had to endure it. A man had to keep his word. Zhu Tui had grown very quickly during these 3 weeks. There were a total of 36 genetic base points in the first level of the version 4.9 of Mind Concentration Foundation forging technique. Zhu Tui had activated the 31st. He would be able to complete the first level in the next 7 to 8 days. He had achieved the so-called elementary level of instantiation. However, in reality, Zhu Tui had already completed the so-called elementary instantiation 3 days ago. He flipped through the book as if it was a toy. Currently, Zhu Tui did not have to use his hands to flush the toilet or turn on the tap. He switched to mind power. Well, it was clean and hygienic. This was especially so for public bathrooms. He studied every day and made great progress in his theory. He had gained a lot. However, the size of his wallet decreased faster than he had expected. In the past, 1 or 2 bottles of level E energy restoration elixirs would have allowed him to activate 1 genetic base point. Now, he needed 5 to 6 bottles to activate a genetic base point that was ranked near the back. In the genetic ability chain, activating the genetic base points at the back of the sequence consumed a large amount of energy. Thanks to Mr. Bian Yuan's attentive guidance, Zhu Tui understood what was going on theoretically. The reason was simple. The genetic ability chain was a collective ability. Even though he had activated a new genetic base point in his ability chain, he had to first strengthen the structure of the genetic ability chain before he could activate a new genetic base point. That meant that when a genetic base point was activated in the same genetic ability chain, it would also strengthen the genetic base points that were already activated. That was why the activation of the ability at the later stages required such a large amount of energy. Similarly, the more genetic base points a genetic ability chain had, the more difficult it was to activate it. Of course, the benefits were obvious. The radius of his mental senses expanded once again. Chapter 62, An Accident in Actual Combat 3. Zhu Tui felt that he would not be able to use the 20-gram vacuum silver tantalum bottle for much longer. The biggest problem Zhu Tui faced now was money. His training speed was fast enough. However, the money he spent could no longer be described as money. 20 days, 300,000. That was $450,000 a month. Zhu Tui felt that he had to proactively slow down his training if he could not find a way to make money in the next 3 weeks. He even considered whether or not he should be like Cheng Mo and activate the genetic base points in his stomach and transform into king of gluttons and consume a large amount of ordinary food to obtain energy. It would greatly reduce the consumption of energy during training. However, the problem was that the king of gluttons could not be activated at will. He could not act recklessly without a systematic training method. It shouldn't be a problem for him to have horns. But having mushrooms on his face was a major problem. It was early in the morning. There were 3 bouquets of fresh flowers at the door of dorm 1604. The words they left behind every day were not the same. Luo Murong had never seen it before. However, Zhu Tui could sense it with his thoughts every day. This was Zhu Tui's daily spoonful of sweetness. After cleaning up, Zhu Tui rushed to the multi-purpose hall for his lesson. The first lesson of the day was a public lecture. It was led by Mr. Wen. He had not attended this class for the past 3 weeks. They said that since everyone had just started training, there was no point in giving this lesson. However, according to the arrangements made last week, they would begin their lesson of the application of actual combat of the mystery branch. You could tell how important this lesson was just from the name. Everyone was very motivated. Not only could they not skip a lesson, but they also had to sit as close to the front as possible. That way, they could hear and see things more clearly. Zhu Tui was also very motivated. However, he was left with the middle back row when he arrived. Class monitor Zhu, here. I reserved a seat for you. The students in the School of Enlightened Mind were rather friendly. They reserved a seat for Zhu Tui. Of course, it was the same as usual, which was at the back of the queue. That was because most of the classes were exceptions to the students in the School of Enlightened Mind because it was not very useful. Thanks. I brought you breakfast. Zhu Tui handed his breakfast bag over to the student from the School of Enlightened Mind, Rong Yuyang. He had reserved a seat for Zhu Tui every time. He had taken up a seat at the back that was loved by many students. Zhu Tui had to thank him. Not long after, Mr. Wenshao entered the venue. He still had the fisherman's hat on his head. Students, we are going to conduct a lesson on the application of actual combat in the mystery branch today. Today, I've invited a student from your school to be your teaching assistant. Let us welcome student Deng Wei. Good morning, everyone. My name is Deng Wei, and I am a first-year speed student from the Extreme Branch Institute. Currently, I have activated 3 genetic ability chains and am rated as a level E liberator. A muscular male student jumped onto the platform and bowed toward the mystery branch students. The students below the stage immediately let out startled cries. Many of the students from the mystery branch had not even activated a single genetic ability chain, yet this student from the Extreme Branch Institute had already activated 3. That was impressive. Students, do you know about the mystery branch's greatest weakness? Wen Xiao smiled. Many of you might have known about this, but you have never had a direct understanding of it. As for today, we'll display it to everyone. Which of you is willing to be Deng Wei's opponent to display your abilities? It is a simple battle. The students on the stage can wear defensive equipment. And it's all voluntary. Mr. Wen, can I make a request? Deng Wei suddenly asked. Wen Xiao glanced at Deng Wei and was a little surprised. However, he had to give him face since he had asked him for help. Yes, tell me. Mr. Wen, can I nominally challenge a certain student? Deng Wei suddenly spoke. Chapter 63, I'll take a video. 1. Mr. Wen, can I nominally challenge a student? Following Deng Wei's words, the 800-odd first-year students of the mystery branch turned their heads toward the middle back row in unison. The gazes all landed on Zhu Tui. Zhu Tui was speechless. It seemed like the students knew that senior Deng Wei was going to challenge him even without his name being called out. Of course, it was mainly because the video of the new student beating up the entire Extreme Branch Institute was too popular. There were over 50,000 comments. Based on the number of posts, every student in the school had sent a reply. Of course, many students from the Extreme Branch Institute furiously roared that they could crush Zhu Tui and beat him to death. There were hundreds of comments like that. Some even got plus 10,086. This caused Zhu Tui to become a famous student in the Mystery Branch Institute. That's right, a famous student. There was a strong competition between the Mystery Branch Institute and the Extreme Branch Institute in the Waxia Genetic Evolution College. Not only did the school not object, but they even encouraged this kind of competition. Under normal circumstances, the Extreme Branch would defeat the Mystery Branch during their first and second years. This situation might change during the third and fourth years. Thus, the students and seniors of the Mystery Branch Institute were rather happy to hear that a first-year student had trounced the Extreme Branch Institute. They would even take it out to scold the students of the Extreme Branch Institute occasionally. The Mystery Branch has already triumphed over the Extreme Branch. Look, there's a video as evidence. That resulted in Zhu Tui's high reputation, and that was how Zhu Tui got his position as the class monitor of the first grade. The other students were all chasing after enlightenment, yet Zhu Tui could defeat an Extreme Branch student. The school of enlightened mind that had always been rather useless suddenly produced a powerful person. How could they not use that person as their class monitor? At the same time, Deng Wei, who was on the platform, also turned his gaze toward Zhu Tui. The meaning behind his words was clear as day. Zhu Tui rubbed his nose in frustration and prepared to get up. Since he was going to go up and get beaten up, he might as well do it once. Let me try it out first. Let me be student Deng's opponent. I'm the superb type and have already activated 2 genetic ability chains and have the practical ability of the superb type. It should be more suitable to give a practical demonstration to the students. Che Zhan suddenly stood up. Che Zhan is the #1 genius of the Mystery Branch's School of Superb, a fire element superb individual. He was skinny and weak, and his face was a little pale. However, his voice was filled with determination. At this moment, Che Zhan taking the initiative to accept the challenge won him the cheers of the Mystery Branch students. Even though Deng Wei was a teaching assistant invited by Mr. Wen, he had to directly challenge Zhu Tui, who had once beaten up the Extreme Branch Institute in the hottest topics in the school. It immediately sparked hatred in the hearts of many students. Everyone felt that Deng Wei was not here to give a demonstration but to cause trouble and embarrass the Mystery Branch in public. He had activated the regional discrimination. Everyone was naturally displeased. They were even angry. Without waiting for Deng Wei to agree, the skinny Che Zhan took the initiative to walk toward the podium. Well, Chazan does have the combat capabilities of a superb type. It would be more educational if he were to demonstrate it, Wen Xiao said. The teacher had already said so. Deng Wei would not have any sense of propriety if he insisted on challenging Zhu Tui. Deng Wei was not a fool. All right, then please put on your protective gear, Chazan. I am from the Extreme Branch Institute's School of Speed and pay attention to fast bursts of power. I will use my full strength once I attack. I didn't want to accidentally injure you. Chazan would not be pretentious about that. He actively put on his protective gear. He had a chest plate, groin guards, arm guards, helmet, special armor, and calf guards. These were protective gear made out of a carbon-based nanobionic material. Even though it was a common model, its defensive capabilities were rather good. It had decent blunt resistance and was a little stronger against sharp attacks. It was rumored that it had bulletproof abilities against ordinary firearms. However, those capabilities were limited to ordinary small-caliber firearms. Mr. Wen, please preside over the battle. All right. Once the podium was moved, it became a martial arts stage that was 10 meters wide and 25 meters long. Get ready. Stop at the right time. Of course, you might get injured during this kind of demonstration. Be careful. 3, 2, 1. Start. Deng Wei suddenly moved after Mr. Wen shouted. He bent his body slightly and charged toward Chazan like a panther from 10 meters away. It even created a slight sound. He was fast. As the #1 genius of the mystery branch, Chazan had not only put in a great deal of effort, but he had also gone through a certain level of practical training. He retreated quickly as soon as the battle started. He raised his hands slightly into the air. An intense fluctuation of mind power and a scorching sensation burst forth from Chazan's body. Bang! Deng Wei, who had been pouncing towards him at a rapid speed, kicked the side of Chazan's leg. Chazan fell onto the ground. At this moment, Chazan conjured a small fireball in his hand. There were small fireballs that looked like arrowheads. Chazan lost control of the fireballs as he fell to the ground due to the attack and pain. Their target was the mystery branch students who were watching the battle. Instantly, there were startled cries. The speed of the small fireballs was not fast, but it definitely exceeded the maximum speed of most extreme branch new students at 100 meters per second. The students in the seats would not be able to avoid it, even if there was a distance. Don't be flustered. Mr. Wen Xiao casually snapped his fingers, and the mini-superb type fireball was extinguished. On the stage, Deng Wei stood in front of the collapsed Chazan with an attacking stance. He extended his hand toward the collapsed Chazan. Student Chazan, you would have already died in battle. Chazan's expression turned a little ugly. He did not accept Deng Wei's kind intentions. Instead, he got up on his own. Again. All right. Deng Wei raised his chin and accepted the challenge readily. He walked to the designated location and said, Student Chazan, I'll give you 1 second to attack this time. I'll give your superb type attack a chance to attack. Chazan clenched his teeth and shook his head. No need. 3, 2, 1. Start. While Mr. Wen was shouting for the battle to begin, intense mind power fluctuations had also surged out of Chazan's body. In less than half a second, the small rocket had taken shape and was flying toward Deng Wei at an even faster speed than before. That speed was considered fast. And Chazan was only 10 meters away from Deng Wei. Deng Wei was a man of his words. He only took action after Chazan launched his mini-rocket. He lowered his body and rolled to the side. Then, he landed on the ground and kicked Chazan onto the ground again. At this moment, the mini-superb rocket that missed its target had just flown past where Deng Wei was standing just now. From the moment the mini-rocket flew out, to Deng Wei taking action, to Chazan falling to the ground, this series of actions took less than a second. All of the mystery branch students were in a state of shock. Chazan was the most talented first-year student in the mystery branch institute and had the strongest abilities. However, he could not withstand a single blow from Deng Wei, a new student from the extreme branch. Student Chazan, you have died in battle again. Chazan pursed his lips tightly. His expression was ugly. Superb type. Were they that weak? Students, this is the meaning of this practical demonstration lesson. The plight that Che-san faces will be a predicament that you will face for the rest of your lives. Of course, it's not that the mystery branch is not powerful enough. It is just that powerful abilities can only be unleashed in an appropriate environment. This required you to think about the changes to your abilities. During these years, you have to experience more of these kinds of battles. You might feel a sense of defeat, but for the future, this kind of actual combat can greatly reduce your chances of death and injury. You will have a clearer understanding of actual combat. Alright, are there any other students who want to challenge student Deng Wei for a demonstration? If not, let's all send student Deng Wei off with a round of applause, Mr. Wen Xiao concluded. Deng Wei looked toward the stage impatiently again after Wen Xiao finished his sentence. He spoke to Wen Xiao at the same time. Mr. Wen, a student from the mystery branch defeated a new student from the extreme branch this year. I saw the video. He is really powerful. If I have the chance, I really want to go through an actual battle with Zhu Tui, Deng Wei said. Che-san rubbed his aching waist and slowly got off the stage. The students below the stage looked toward Zhu Tui again. On the stage, Wen Xiao knitted his brows slightly. Student Deng Wei, the actual battle drill is decided by your will. You want to invite student Zhu Tui up onto the stage for the drill. That would depend on student Zhu Tui's will. I won't stop him if he agrees. However, you cannot force him if he is unwilling, Mr. Wen Xiao expressed his stance. Thank you, Mr. Wen. I understand. Deng Wei nodded and looked toward Zhu Tui, who was below the stage. Student Zhu Tui, this is just a practical battle. You wouldn't be too scared to go on stage, would you? Are you that cowardly? The students below the stage revealed angry expressions. Was Deng Wei bent on slapping the faces of the mystery branch first-year students? He had already defeated the #1 genius from the mystery branch institute twice. Wasn't that enough? Did he have to beat Zhu Tui down to be happy? Instantly, Zhu Tui, who had once dominated the extreme branch institute in school, became the last shred of dignity for the mystery branch first-year students. The students had mixed feelings. They hoped that Zhu Tui would accept the challenge and defeat Deng Wei to preserve the dignity of a first-year student in the mystery branch. However, they did not want Zhu Tui to go on stage. If Zhu Tui was defeated again, then Deng Wei would have taken off the first-year student's underwear. As the person in question, Zhu Tui rubbed his nose in frustration. He slowly stood up. The other party had already called him by his surname, yet he was still scolding him. If Zhu Tui did not accept the challenge soon, he was really a coward. Men could be reserved. However, he could not back down. Since student Deng is so interested in me, let's have a real battle. There was a round of applause. Zhu Tui quickly walked onto the stage under the gazes of many students. Be careful. Try to widen the distance between you and him. He's very fast, but it doesn't feel like he's balanced on both sides. His right leg is stronger, but his left leg is weaker. Che-san reminded Zhu Tui in an extremely low voice as he passed by him because they had a common enemy. When he got onto the stage, Zhu Tui realized that he did not bring any soybeans with him today. He had not brought soybeans in days. After all, he was studying every day. It was not appropriate for him to bring along soybeans all the time. Eating too much would cause trouble for the other students. They were usually useless too. However, Zhu Tui did not mind it. The purpose of today's battle drill was the battle between an extreme branch ability and a mystery branch ability. Soon, he would use his mystery branch ability to battle Deng Wei. He could already instantiate his mind power at a low level. It was a good opportunity to use it in battle. Even though the ability to instantiate mind power at a low level was not very valuable when used in battle, Zhu Tui had managed to find a direction in his daily life. Zhu Tui jumped onto the makeshift stage and started putting on his protective gear. He had to put on protective gear to protect himself from Deng Wei. Just as Zhu Tui was putting on his protective gear, Deng Wei suddenly took out his communication device and placed it at the corner of the stage. He looked for an angle and activated the recording function. Zhu Tui wouldn't mind if I recorded a video, would you? The first years of the mystery branch immediately burst into an uproar. Wasn't this going a little overboard? Chapter 64, Actual battle first, demonstration later. 1. Up to you. I have no objections. Of course, Deng Wei would not give up on recording the video even without Zhu Tui's agreement. Since he had to fight back, he had to have the evidence. In this day and age, pictures and videos were the truth. Zhu Tui put on the protective gear very carefully. After he put it on, he started to rummage through the protective gearbox. Deng Wei became a little impatient. What are you looking for? Mr. Wen Xiao asked. Mr. Wen, there are only helmets, are there no face guards, or face armor? Wen Xiao was shocked. Why do you need face guards? Zhu Tui gestured. Mr. Wen, I'm so handsome. The students below the stage immediately fell over. It caused several students to laugh. The tense atmosphere was immediately quelled. Get ready. The next instant, Deng Wei and Zhu Tui stood still on the stage. They were still 10 meters apart. It was also at this moment that Zhu Tui's gaze became incredibly sharp. He became extremely focused. Start. Deng Wei was like a panther that had been released from its cage the moment he finished his sentence. He traversed the 3-meter distance with every step and attacked Zhu Tui. Deng Wei took his second step and landed. He closed the distance to less than 3 meters and was about to attack Zhu Tui. Zhu Tui's gaze froze. Almost instantly, an indescribable feeling appeared in Deng Wei's heart. He felt as though there was something else in the empty space in front of him. However, he could not see anything. Bang! Deng Wei, who was charging forward, suddenly fell backward. It was as though he had hit his head against an obstacle. He fell backward. Zhu Tui's body also trembled. He took half a step back. Zhu Tui had condensed a triangular mental all with his mind power just now. It was placed in front of Deng Wei's head. This mental all was a small technique that Zhu Tui had developed after he used his low-level mind power in the past few days. Zhu Tui's mind power could materialize objects during low-level instantiation. For example, pressing on the toilet button or running a tap. However, such low-level instantiation of mind power could only be used at a certain point. It could not be accelerated or moved at will. It was a little like a display game. Zhu Tui placed an invisible mental all on Deng Wei's forehead as he charged toward him. Then, Deng Wei crashed into the mental all. The mental all was instantly shattered by an external force. It slightly shook Zhu Tui's mind. However, Deng Wei was sent tumbling by the mental all. The stronger Deng Wei's speed was, the more powerful the mental all would be. By the side, Mr. Wen Xiao, who had sensed the mental all, suddenly had a strange expression. He looked at Zhu Tui in disbelief. A large red bruise rapidly swelled on Deng Wei's head. However, Deng Wei's reaction speed was extremely fast. His battle sense was also extremely strong. He must have been through similar training. He rolled and got close to Zhu Tui the moment he hit the ground. He planted his hands on the ground and twisted his legs as he charged toward Zhu Tui. Deng Wei, who had activated 2 speed-related genetic abilities within a 3-meter radius, was not someone Zhu Tui could avoid. Even though Zhu Tui could clearly sense the path of Deng Wei's attacks with his mental senses and knew how to avoid them, he could not avoid them. The speed of his body and his overall reactions could not match the feedback of his mind power. Bang! Zhu Tui was slammed heavily onto the ground by Deng Wei's spiraling foot. One of his legs landed on the side of Zhu Tui's waist, while the other landed directly on Zhu Tui's left neck and face. Zhu Tui rolled 180 degrees on the spot and fell face-first onto the ground. Below the stage, the students from the mystery branch let out a cry of surprise. Deng Wei, who was standing still, touched the swollen bulge at the center of his forehead. There was a flash of shock in his eyes. What kind of ability was that? If that ability had targeted his vital points just now, then he would. The kicks were rather brutal. Zhu Tui felt as though he was suffocating. He felt as though his head and neck had been hit by a sledgehammer. His ears were buzzing. Zhu Tui panted heavily before sitting up with difficulty. His face felt a little warm. His hand was covered in blood. There was blood. The pungent smell of blood suddenly reminded Zhu Tui of the scene when Ahu, the modified human, attacked him. There was no fear. Instead, there was a strange sensation. This was the smell of war. Deng Wei had clearly been merciless when he attacked. Che Zhan had been knocked down twice during his battle with Deng Wei just now but was not injured. However, Zhu Tui was injured. Zhu Tui felt that his left molar had become a little loose. The mystery branch students below the stage immediately became agitated when they saw Zhu Tui's bleeding face. Several students pointed at Deng Wei and scolded him. Zhu Tui had already shown you mercy. Why are you still so merciless? If the mind power that Zhu Tui conjured was aimed at your vital points, such as your eyes, you would have become blind long ago. The outcome had been decided, yet you still didn't let go. Do you have any shame? Why did you have to be so heavy-handed? Did you come to our school to bully us? The mystery branch students were rather knowledgeable. Many people immediately realized that the scene just now was caused by Zhu Tui's discovery of mind power. Zhu Tui had held back just now. Of course, he was not holding back. That was kindness. If the mental awl was aimed at an eyeball, the eyeball would definitely explode from the speed at which Deng Wei crashed into it. It was merely a demonstration, yet if he had crippled one of Deng Wei's eyes, he would have gone overboard. Thus, Zhu Tui placed it on his forehead. Deng Wei, who had been scolded, felt a little scared. If that attack had really landed on his eyes, the outcome would have been. Chapter 65, Actual Battle First, Demonstration Later, 2. However, Deng Wei had no intention of regretting his decision. Who cared about these things on the battlefield? Zhu Tui, how are you? Do you need to see the school doctor? Mr. Wen Xiao asked anxiously. Zhu Tui waved his hand, indicating that he was fine. Deng Wei was eager to go. He pointed at Zhu Tui and said, "Are you still coming?" He had been put at a slight disadvantage just now because it happened too suddenly. Now, Deng Wei wanted to play another round. Zhu Tui looked at Deng Wei's provocative gaze and wiped off the blood from his nose. He slowly stood up. Again. All right. Deng Wei gave Zhu Tui a thumbs up. Be careful. This time, I'll go all out to avoid your attacks and take you down. Bring it on. The next instant, as soon as Mr. Wen announced the start of the battle, Deng Wei darted forward again. Deng Wei, who had dashed out this time, immediately executed a series of fancy jumps. It was like dodging a sniper rifle. It dodged the invisible mental awl while rapidly approaching Zhu Tui. It had to be said that Deng Wei's battle tactics were rather useful. Deng Wei even deliberately shielded his eyes with his hands to prevent his eyes from being pierced. However, no matter how fancy Deng Wei's battle tactics were, Zhu Tui's mental senses still managed to capture the trajectory of his movements. Zhu Tui only needed to think to set up the mental awl. It could be done in an instant. Furthermore, Deng Wei had left some space between the hand that was protecting his eyes and his body to allow him to see. Zhu Tui could rotate the mental awl between Deng Wei's hand and his eyes. It will directly explode his eyes. However, the kindness in his heart prevented Zhu Tui from doing that. The explosion was too brutal. Even with the medical technology of the Great Genetic Age, an eyeball could not be repaired once it exploded. They could only install artificial eyes. Zhu Tui instantly placed the mental awl at Deng Wei's throat. Deng Wei, who was pouncing forward, swayed slightly as if he had sensed something strange. Then, the side of Deng Wei's neck hit the mental awl violently. The stronger Deng Wei's speed was, the more powerful the impact of the mental awls. Deng Wei staggered from the impact. However, he relied on his exceptional balance to turn around and jump. He kicked toward Zhu Tui continuously. The series of kicks had immense power. The first kick sent Zhu Tui sprawling onto the ground. The second kick was aimed toward Zhu Tui. Their target was Zhu Tui's unprotected face. The mystery branch students instantly let out a cry of surprise. Zhu Tui protected his face with his hand at the critical moment. Deng Wei stomped his foot fiercely onto Zhu Tui's forehead. A large kick landed on his face. Bang! The back of Zhu Tui's head hit the floor violently before bouncing back. Even though Zhu Tui was wearing protective gear, he still felt dizzy from the impact. There was a little more color in his eyes. It must have been a heavy blow to his face. His eyes were bloodshot. You've gone overboard, Deng Wei. You've gone overboard. This is a demonstration, not a real battle. I didn't ask you to torture people. The mystery branch students started to shout. Gongling and the students from the School of Enlightened Mind were so nervous that they wanted to run onto the stage to see how Zhu Tui was doing. Suddenly, Zhu Tui, who was lying on the ground, raised a hand. I'm all right. Zhu Tui slowly sat up again after he said those words with difficulty. As a teacher, Wen Xiao also ran in front of Zhu Tui at this moment. Zhu Tui, let me call the school doctor for you. The school will foot the medical expenses for the injuries you sustained during the battle drill. You don't have to. I'm fine. Zhu Tui's tone was very determined. Wen Xiao was a little frustrated. All of the first-year mystery branch students were looking at Zhu Tui anxiously, yet they could not forcefully suppress Zhu Tui. All they could do was watch as Zhu Tui stood up nervously. Zhu Tui, who was standing, looked a little terrifying. There was blood at his mouth and nose. His forehead was covered in bruises, and his entire left eye was swollen. There were abrasions all over it. Deng Wei, who had been reprimanded by the entire mystery branch's first-year cohort, looked at the furious first-year cohort below the stage with an unyielding gaze. This is a battle drill. The actual battle is first, and the drill is later. Furthermore, we are genetic newcomers. We would have to face 10 times, 100 times, or even more danger in the future. If you can't even accept such a small threat, why did you come to the Waxia Genetic Evolution College? Deng Wei's tone was arrogant. He finally looked toward Wen Xiao. Mr. Wen, am I right? Wen Xiao nodded with a heavy expression. That makes sense. You are right. The actual battle is first and the drill is later. Would you still dare to come? Zhu Tui, who was slowly standing, interrupted Wen Xiao. He looked toward Deng Wei. HMPH, I'll entertain you to the end if you dare. Deng Wei was very confident and arrogant. All right, Zhu Tui, whose face was covered in blood, nodded. He then looked toward Wen Xiao. Mr. Wen, since this is a battle drill, can I use all of my abilities? Zhu Tui asked. Of course. Wen Xiao nodded. Student Deng Wei, I have a very famous ability. Do you know it? Can I use it? Zhu Tui asked. Super Soybean. Deng Wei naturally did not refuse. He had already said that he had to do it in person. How could he slap himself in the face? Of course. The next instant, Zhu Tui wiped the blood off his face and spat out a mouthful of blood. He then spoke to the audience. Which student brought soybeans? I didn't bring soybeans today. Below the stage, the 800-odd first-year mystery branch students were utterly defeated. Who would bring soybeans to class? Wouldn't he have brought along cute snacks even if he had a snack? Who would bring soybeans? Below the stage, the 800-odd first-year students of the mystery branch looked at each other. No one brought soybeans. On the stage, Zhu Tui was also frustrated. None of them had soybeans. A round one would do. Just don't make it too large or too small, Zhu Tui said. The 800-odd students from the mystery branch started searching for their pockets. There aren't any in the male students. The button was a little round, but it was flat. Several female students even started to look at their jewelry. Gongling was the most anxious. She looked at his body. There were no round accessories. Her gaze suddenly landed on the pearl necklace around her roommate's neck. There was a dark blue pendant on her pearl necklace. It was very beautiful. The pearl was very round. Qingqing, give these 2 pearls for emergencies. Zhao Qingqing froze. She instantly understood what her roommate meant. After a moment's hesitation, Zhao Qingqing removed her necklace, twisted open the clasp, and retrieved 3 round pearls for Gongling. Is that enough? It should be enough. Gongling immediately jogged toward the stage. She had an imposing manner when she ran. Super fierce. Student Zhu Tui, this is for you. Thank you. Zhu Tui fetched over the pearl and weighed it in his hand. The pearl had a nice texture. He slowly stood 10 meters in front of Deng Wei. Yes, I held back during the previous 2 times. This time, we'll have a real battle. Then a drill later on. Be careful. Zhu Tui's voice was a little hoarse. All right. You should be careful. I'll still use my full strength. Deng Wei nodded. 3 seconds later, Mr. Wen announced the start of the battle. Deng Wei once again pounced toward Zhu Tui like a panther released from its cage. With his previous 2 experiences, Deng Wei's battle tactics had become more varied and unpredictable. It was all to avoid the invisible mental walls. This time, Deng Wei had learned his lesson. He understood that the reason the mental all had injured him was that he was very fast. Deng Wei spent more than a second infiltrating an area of 3 meters in front of Zhu Tui before he unleashed his power. He was like a flying dragon. He took to the air and continuously kicked toward Zhu Tui's head. Mental all. The sudden appearance of the mental all caused Deng Wei, who had just taken to the air, to stagger. The mental all had been placed in front of his eyes. However, Deng Wei managed to avoid being hit in the eyes and was hit in the chest by the impact. While he was staggering and falling, Deng Wei pushed with his left hand. His waist twisted like an earth dragon as he supported himself with his arms and sprinted. He charged toward Zhu Tui with both legs. Killing intent suddenly flashed past Zhu Tui's eyes. Whoosh, whoosh. The sound of something piercing through the air rang out. Deng Wei let out a dull grunt almost instantly. His left leg suddenly became weak, and his stomach violently contracted. Deng Wei, who was about to kick, suddenly fell to the ground. Almost instantly, Deng Wei could not help but let out a pathetic cry. Everyone was shocked. The students were all dumbfounded. The next instant, fiery applause rang out from below the stage. Wen Xiao's expression suddenly became a little ugly. This matter has become a little too serious. Chapter 66, The Pearl Becomes Powder. Is this the school's emergency center? This is the Mystery Branch Institute's No. 2 multi-purpose teaching hall. A student here has sustained serious external injuries and needs emergency treatment. Wen Xiao only glanced at Deng Wei before immediately calling the emergency department. External injuries, burns, or a large number of lacerations. Do you need large-scale life support devices? He has external injuries. There's no need for large-scale life support equipment. He might need emergency surgery, Wen Xiao said as he looked at the wound on Deng Wei's stomach. This was too much. Wen Xiao was about to mention someone when Zhu Tui suddenly said, "Teacher, I need one too." 2 people. Wen Xiao looked deeply at Zhu Tui. The applause gradually stopped. The students below the stage were a little shocked by Deng Wei's injuries. After all, according to what Mr. Wen said, Deng Wei's external injuries were rather serious. However, no one sympathized with Deng Wei. He had asked for it because he was too arrogant. He was too ignorant. On the contrary, the students became concerned about Zhu Tui's injuries. A caring female student had already brought him a tissue. Far away, Chezan gave Zhu Tui a thumbs up. Zhu Tui rubbed the remaining smooth pearl in his hand. He then looked at Deng Wei, who had fallen to the ground and was howling in pain. A hint of sympathy flashed past his eyes, but it quickly became determined. He had asked for it. He had already given Deng Wei a chance. However, not only did Deng Wei use extreme force, he also did not hold back when he stomped on the areas where Zhu Tui had no protective gear. He deserved it. He shouldn't have any serious residual effects, right? Deng Wei had avoided the mental all that Zhu Tui had aimed at his eyes just now. However, he did not manage to avoid Zhu Tui's flicking technique. One of the 2 pearls accurately pierced into the knee joint of Deng Wei's left leg from the side and interrupted his attack. The other pearl hit Deng Wei's vital spot at his lower abdomen. Zhu Tui did not know exactly how badly he was injured. However, it was definitely not light. 2 minutes passed. Deng Wei was still crying out in pain. He could not get up on his own. Wen Xiao, who had always been smiling, had a dark expression while he was waiting for the emergency treatment. This class is. Less than 3 minutes later, the medical personnel from the Waxia Genetic Evolution College's Emergency Medical Center rushed over. They were carrying 2 gurneys. Zhu Tui laid down on the gurney by himself. The medical personnel first examined Deng Wei's injuries to see if he needed emergency treatment. However, he became extremely shocked after he took a look. "Mr. Wen, what happened? Why was it so brutal? It has not been 3 months, right? Do your best to treat him. I'll release a report about the incident later." Wen Xiao had a headache. The ambulance had left. There was a pool of blood on the temporary stage. There were also specks of blood. The grim-faced Mr. Wen Xiao continued his lesson. "Students, there was an accident during today's practical battle. However, it is more educational. The battle between Chezan and Deng Wei was a practice run. The battle between Zhu Tui and Deng Wei was closer to a real battle. Their actions were a little extreme, but it was closer to an actual battle. However, I want to tell you that the outcome of today's battle is nothing. Because you are new students, you have 3 months of rapid growth. Therefore, you will be protected for the next 3 months. 3 months later, getting injured or severely injured would become a daily occurrence for you. You might even die. Of course, the medical center and emergency services in our school are all very professional. They are one of the best in the capital. You can rest assured about that. At this point, Wen Xiao paused. Next, I'll set up the homework for today. There are 2 things that the mystery branch has to pay attention to during battle. The first is an analysis of today's battle drill. The second part is an analysis of the things to pay attention to during battle based on your specialization and ability. You have to submit your report 2 days later. I'll go through them one by one. Class dismissed. After Wen Xiao left, the mystery branch students did not disperse as usual. Instead, they gathered to discuss what had happened today. Many students had already started to repost their posts on social media. A student from the extreme branch failed to challenge the mystery branch and got injured instead. A student from the extreme branch came to the mystery branch for a demonstration and looked down on everyone else. He was beaten instead. There were a variety of headlines. However, most of them were set to be viewed by a special audience. The rules of conduct for genetic newcomers were very strict. It had only been 20 days since the school opened, but many of the new students had already received a fine from the Special Intelligence Division. Some of the more severe cases had even been called to an education center to write a reflection. It was rumored that a daring individual had uploaded a video of the principal flicking his fingers in his accounts for his friends to see. The Special Intelligence Division then fined him $10,000 and lectured him for a day. He even wrote a 10,000-word reflection report when he returned to school. His level treatment also dropped by 1 level. Thus, everyone had learned their lesson. Emergency Medical Center. Zhu Tui's injuries were treated quickly. He had a slight concussion, swollen eardrums, and bloodshot eyes. His soft tissue was severely bruised, and his left tooth was slightly fractured. The doctor administered an injection to Zhu Tui. You can return to the dormitory to rest after observation for half a day. I've administered the bone growth acceleration elixir to you. Your bone fracture should recover in 3 to 4 days. Pay attention to it during these few days. The medical personnel administering the injection suddenly asked, "Did you injure that lad?" Zhu Tui nodded. "Ha, you sure are impressive. How is he? Is it serious?" He had severe contusions to his testicles, which were accompanied by edema and bleeding. He has been through emergency treatment, but the situation is not optimistic. Even if the testicles are not completely necrotic, they would be partially necrotic. He would need to be treated with surgery in the future. The outcome was a little too severe. It wouldn't affect his future, would it? It would definitely affect him. However, the impact on his male abilities would not be too great. After all, the other one is good. But the real problem is the injury at his knee, the medical personnel said. Knee? What's wrong with his knee? That pearl might have pierced through his pants, but it would definitely not have pierced through his kneecap, right? Zhu Tui was shocked. It did not pierce through his kneecap. However, the angle was to the side, so the pearl happened to enter Deng Wei's knee joint. There shouldn't be a problem. The torn ligaments in the joints can be treated. The ligament is indeed damaged. However, the troublesome thing is this pearl. The pearls are poisonous. That's not possible, right? That was the first possibility Zhu Tui thought of. This pearl is not poisonous. Furthermore, it is a truly rare natural pearl. Then what's going on? The medical personnel looked at Zhu Tui and were a little frustrated. The natural pearls are not that strong. They shattered when they hit the inside of the knee joint. They shattered into countless little dots. Yes, it looks like they were beaten into pearl powder. Pearl powder. Zhu Tui instantly imagined a rather terrifying scene. That's right, just as you thought, the fine pearl powder has entered his knee joint and is spraying everywhere. The ligaments, meniscus, synovial membrane, and joint cartilage were all covered in this kind of pearl powder. The levels of the powder varied. The difficulty of the operation was extremely high. There might be residual effects. I don't know about that. I didn't do it on purpose, Zhu Tui said. Write an explanation report after you're done. The school will definitely investigate such a serious incident that happened within 3 months of a new student entering the school. The medical personnel were very kind. Thank you. According to what the medical personnel said, Deng Wei's injuries were more severe than Zhu Tui had expected. He might have to replace some of his knee joints. This had a large impact on Deng Wei, especially since he was a student from the extreme branch. These kinds of injuries made Deng Wei's left leg a painful point and a weakness. After a knee replacement, the activation of genetic base points could not be done on the knee. It could be said that Deng Wei's future had been largely ruined by his injuries in this battle. The consequences were rather severe. Did Zhu Tui regret what he did? He did not regret it. He did not regret it at all. Zhu Tui might have been more merciless if he had to do it again. Today, Zhu Tui received another education. He started to reflect. However, he felt a little pity for Deng Wei. He had been blinded by the people who were leading the way and had taken the initiative to cause trouble for Zhu Tui. He could only say that he deserved it. Of course, Deng Wei was not purely blinded by the person leading the group. There might be other effects, such as utility and reputation. Otherwise, he would not have deliberately recorded a video before the battle. He would have saved the extreme branch's reputation by beating Zhu Tui up early on. Then, Deng Wei's reputation in the Extreme Branch Institute would reach a very high level. He would be able to assume a few student roles to a large extent. In a top college like the Waxia Genetic Evolution College, the position that any student could hold was of utmost importance. That was only one of the benefits. Wen Xiao, what happened in your class? The medical center called just now and said that Deng Wei might have to have his knee replaced. Do you know what that means to a student from the Extreme Branch Institute? You were the one who invited the student over. You have to give me an explanation for this. Inside the office, Wen Xiao received a scolding call. It was a call from the vice chairman of the Extreme Branch Institute, Zhou Wenji. Vice Chairman Zhou, this was an accident. The corner of Wen Xiao's mouth was filled with bitterness. The student was almost crippled. And you dare to say it's an accident? How does a teacher like you manage things? Also, who was the student that injured him? How could he be so merciless? How could he be so merciless to his classmates? It had not been 3 months. Is he going to kill someone after 3 months? Vice Chairman Zhou sounded very angry. Your mystery branch has to give us an explanation for this matter. You have to punish the student who injured him severely. Wen Xiao still wanted to say something, but Vice Chairman Zhou had already hung up the phone. Chapter 67, Crippling and the Video 1. Zhu Tui only stayed in the emergency center for 2 hours. Under his intense request, Dr. He allowed Zhu Tui to sign on the form before letting him leave. These 2 hours were required 2 hours. Zhu Tui thought about it and reflected on himself. Both Wen Xiao and the doctor at the emergency center mentioned a deadline, 3 months. The 3 months of a new student's life was a period of rapid growth and protection. It was a little like the novice protection period in the game. The competition that the school allowed was relatively lesser. However, the competition became completely open 3 months later. According to the rules, if both parties were willing, they could injure or even kill the other party, much less cripple the other party. Competition was encouraged in both the Waxia Genetic Evolution College and the other genetic evolution colleges. Those who had the upper hand in the competition would receive a large number of cultivation resources. The most famous of them all was the Longhu list. They have the Longhu list for the first years to the third years. There was no Longhu list for fourth-year students. First, many of the seniors had not been in school during their fourth year, especially those who had the ability and were powerful. They had long left the school. It was meaningless for them to be listed on the Year 4 Longhu list alone. Other than that, there was also the overall rankings of the school. There were 100 rankings for both the Longhu list and the Longhu overall rankings. The first was called the Dragon. The top 10 were called the Tigers. So a total of 1 Dragon and 9 Tigers. The rest of the people on the rankings were called the Talents. Those who failed to enter the rankings would become dust under the wind. Honor was one thing. However, the benefits of having true ability were immense. For example, Dragon in the number 1 spot in every grade could collect 4 bottles of level E energy restoration elixirs from the school every 3 days as long as he was on the rankings for more than 3 days. He consumed more than 1 bottle a day. That was only one of the benefits. If one could enter the top 10 and be a tiger, he could only obtain 3 level E energy restoration elixirs every 3 days. The second on the Donghua list, which was the best tiger of each grade, had additional benefits. The students ranked 11th to 40th could receive 2 bottles of level E energy restoration elixirs every 3 days. From the 41st to the 70th place, a student could receive a level E energy restoration elixir every 3 days. From the 71st to the 100th place, a person could receive 30 level F energy restoration pills every 3 days or, after accumulating them, a bottle of level E energy restoration elixir every 6 days. What made Zhu Tui even more excited was that the energy restoration elixir rewarded for the people on the school's Donghua overall rankings had become an even more precious level D elixir. A bottle of a level D energy restoration elixir was worth $50,000. Is the Donghua list dangerous? Yes. According to Dr. He, because of the Donghua list, students would be severely injured or even forced out of the school every year. Some might even die. Death was not uncommon. The safety precautions worked a little at this moment. In the words of Dr. He, since they were going to fight for the rankings, they had to be prepared to be injured or even killed. They had to pay a price if they wanted to obtain more resources. Otherwise, why would the school and the government invest millions in a student like you? If Dragon of the first year Donghua list could hold onto its position for a year, the value of the level E energy elixirs would total $2.4 million a year. A fortune of $2.4 million. If it was Zhu Tui's father, Zhu Jianguo, he would have to work hard for 40 years without eating or drinking to save such a large sum of money. Of course, they can choose not to fight. They would graduate peacefully and become a more ordinary genetic newcomer. If there were no accidents, a student who had graduated from the Waxia Genetic Evolution College could find a stable job, get married, and have children. As long as the extraterrestrial situation on the blue star is stable, the extraterrestrial battlefield, the extraterrestrial invaders, the latest genetic technology, and even genetic weapons have nothing to do with you. Would they be content with that? Zhu Tui would definitely not be content with that. When the time came, he would definitely have to fight for his place on the Donghua list. It was also this starting point that made Zhu Tui feel that today's battle drill with Deng Wei was a reminder to him. That was not an actual battle. Zhu Tui might be able to better protect himself if he had to go through the same battle drill today. However, he would not severely injure Deng Wei during their first or second exchange. It was even more impossible for him to directly explode Deng Wei's eyeballs. First, this was essentially a sparring session between students. Deng Wei might have had a problem with his intentions, but Zhu Tui had not crippled him for life by blowing out his eyeballs the moment he attacked. He was not that cruel. Zhu Tui was a high school student who came from a normal family. He was a little mean, a little mischievous, a little cunning, but definitely not brutal. More importantly, the Waxia Genetic Evolution College's rules for new students were not for show. If Zhu Tui managed to make Deng Wei's eyeballs explode during their first exchange, what awaited him tomorrow was an expulsion order. He would also have to bear legal responsibility and financial compensation. Zhu Tui remembered the lesson that An Xiaozu had taught him. Learn to use the rules to protect yourself. So he extended his plan and used the rules to attack his enemies. During their second exchange, Deng Wei had intentionally injured Zhu Tui. Even though he had no intention of killing Zhu Tui, they were already enemies. That resulted in the third round. However, Deng Wei's injuries were more severe than Zhu Tui had expected. He had been crippled. Zhu Tui had his own plans for this. However, he did not think that crippling an individual would result in a fatal change to his future. Chapter 68, Crippling and the Video 2. This was part of using the rules to attack the enemy. The battle today had awakened Zhu Tui to his individual abilities. Before this, Zhu Tui had always believed in a saying, a professional was the most powerful. It was the same as constantly strengthening your specialization to become more powerful. He would be sloppy if he wanted to be proficient in everything. In the past, Zhu Tui had thought that way. However, Today, Zhu Tui suddenly started to doubt that understanding. The theory of winning or losing in a one-on-one battle was accurate. What if the premise was survival? What if it was a chaotic battle? What if it was a battle of numbers? Just like today, when Zhu Tui had fought Deng Wei for the second time, he had clearly seen the trajectory of Deng Wei's attack through the feedback of his mental senses and had come up with a plan to avoid it. As long as he could execute the plan, he would be able to avoid Deng Wei's attacks. However, Zhu Tui's overall reaction could not match up to the feedback he got from his mind. He could only take a beating. Zhu Tui had been thinking about this question during the 2 hours he was at the emergency center. How should he develop his training direction in the future? Was it to strengthen the specialization, specialized in training the mind power, just like in Xiaozu, who used powerful mind power to control the battlefield? Or should he adopt a different approach and develop his training based on his overall needs? That choice was very important. It could be said that this decision would determine Zhu Tui's future. Zhu Tui still did not have an answer even after he thought about it for 2 hours. However, he understood that he had to make a choice within the next 2 months. In the afternoon, Zhu Tui returned to the classroom with his injuries. The lessons recently had been on fundamental theory. They were very important. He did not want to miss classes. The incident during his morning practice session had made Zhu Tui a celebrity. Deng Wei, who had wanted to make a name for himself by humiliating Zhu Tui, was not the only person who had recorded the incident. Many students had also done the same. The video became a hot topic in the Waxia Genetic Evolution College when it was uploaded onto a specific social media platform. The click rate soared. Most of the students supported Zhu Tui. After the first lesson in the afternoon, Zhu Tui received a call from the disciplinary division. He had to give an explanation of how Deng Wei was severely injured and crippled during today's combat drill. According to the notice on the disciplinary division's phone, Deng Wei had already completed his emergency surgery. A third of the testicles that had been severely injured had been removed. They had also lost some of their function. Originally, the emergency center had planned to replace Deng Wei's knee with a brand new bionic knee joint so that Deng Wei's movements would not be affected after the replacement. However, it would become the biggest problem for Deng Wei's future training in the extreme branch. The genetic ability chain that involved the knee joint could not be activated. Deng Wei's extreme branch ability could continuously enhance the rest of his body, but the strength of his knee would always remain the same. It could be said that Deng Wei's leg functions would not be affected after his knee joint was changed. However, his training in the extreme branch would become useless. Deng Wei was one of the geniuses among the first-year students of the Extreme Branch Institute. He would be a powerful contender for the first-year Longhua list in the future. Deng Wei felt extremely indignant that he was crippled just like that. Finally, he chose to preserve the knee joint at the cost of losing a portion of its function and enduring the pain. That way, he could continue to train his extreme branch abilities. If he had the chance to reach the genetic evolution stage or the genetic transmutation stage in the future, he might be able to use the powerful power of evolution to repair his body's disabilities. However, for the foreseeable future, Deng Wei would become a cripple. He was crippled. The emergency surgery had been completed. The results of the consultations from several experts were the same. He was crippled during the battle drill. The teachers and students of the Extreme Branch Institute were furious and requested for the school to investigate. That was how the disciplinary division got involved. Not long after Zhu Tui received the call from the disciplinary division, the news that Deng Wei had been severely injured during a battle drill spread throughout the Waxia Genetic Evolution College. Zhu Tui had not even passed the 3 months growth phase for the new students, yet he had crippled someone during a battle drill. This was something that had never happened in the Waxia Genetic Evolution College before. The school encouraged competition outside of the 3-month protection period. There was nothing to be shocked about if there were incidents of maiming. However, if such an incident happened during the 3-month protection period, it would become a vicious incident. Soon, another trending video pushed the matter to the extreme. A popular information creator in the school called Eternity Begins released a video. It was a video of the drill. He only released a video of the third battle between Zhu Tui and Deng Wei. In the video, Zhu Tui had taken action and severely injured Deng Wei. Crippled. The overlord who had once defeated an extreme branch new student brutally attacked again and crippled an extreme branch new student. Once this video was released, it immediately became the #1 trending video in the school. A large number of students who did not know the truth started to shout insults at Zhu Tui in the comments section. Student Rong Yuyang from the School of Enlightened Mind immediately found Zhu Tui and reported his discovery. Public opinion might be detrimental to Zhu Tui if this continued. Find out how to contact the person who sent the message. I'll send him an urgent email first. After he said his piece, Zhu Tui sent an email to the person who had sent the message. Eternity begins. He explained the incomplete video and attached a complete video. He requested that he modify the video as soon as possible. However, he did not receive any reply after half an hour. However, the information producer, Eternity Begins, once again released a video of Zhu Tui fighting Yuan Shu and his group during this time. A first-year student is brutal by nature. He crippled his opponent immediately. This edited video quickly became a hot topic. After all, this person was a source of information for the school. He had 40,000 fans in the Waxia Genetic Evolution College. Even though 40,000 fans was not a large number, these 40,000 fans were all genetic newcomers from the Waxia Genetic Evolution College. In other words, nearly 80% of the students and teachers in the Waxia Genetic Evolution College were paying attention to his trending video. How much influence would he have when he released a video of the fight? Zhu Tui was anxious to contact him. However, the mystery branch students had not been on the campus for long and did not know who this person really was. At the critical moment, it was still Chai Xiao who helped him. He soon sent Zhu Tui a set of phone numbers and a message. Brother, the person who uploaded the trending video is in his 3rd year. This is his information. Contact him yourself and talk to him. I have some conflict with him, so it's not convenient for me to step in. Chapter 69, Evidence 1. Hello, is this Senior Lian Jinzang? Zhu Tui made a call. Lian Jinzang was a 3rd-year student from the Waxia Genetic Evolution College's Mystery Branch Institute. He was a well-known producer of trending information in the Waxia Genetic Evolution College's School of Superbs. He was won the Longhua list and was named as a talent, and he was ranked 72nd on the Year 3 Longhua list. Soon, the other students from the School of Enlightened Mind managed to gather most of the information and reported it to Zhu Tui on the phone. Hello, I am Lian Jinzang. Who is this? The voice on the other end of the line was clean. Good morning, Senior Lian. You released a trending video. It's titled, Crippled. The overlord who once defeated an extreme branch new student brutally attacked again and crippled an extreme branch new student. Why, do you have a problem? It's like this, Senior Lian. You have only released the end of the video. It is not the entire video. Sending the last portion of the video might cause some misunderstandings or even unnecessary trouble. Senior Lian, I'll send you a complete video. Can you modify it or upload again? Zhu Tui said. The person on the other end of the line suddenly laughed. Are you Zhu Tui or someone close to Zhu Tui? I am Zhu Tui. You want to settle this matter? I did not want to cause a conflict. I hope that more students will see the truth, Zhu Tui said. 500,000. I'll modify it according to your instructions. Anger appeared in Zhu Tui's eyes. Without waiting for Zhu Tui to flare up, Lian Jinzang suddenly laughed loudly on the other end of the line. Junior, don't be nervous. I was just joking. Why would I want your money? I was just kidding. However, there are no problems with my video. Why should I change it? Think about it. Zhu Tui and his classmates from the School of Enlightened Mind had just a glimmer of hope in their eyes when it was extinguished. They had already recorded the call. Zhu Tui would sue Lian Jinzang for extortion if he dared to ask for $500,000. Did they think that the disciplinary division had rules that were decorative? However, after he offered $500,000, Lian Jinzang immediately added that it was a joke. That was how brilliant Lian Jinzang was. Couldn't he have been joking? However, he had already given Zhu Tui a price. He wanted Zhu Tui to settle the matter with $500,000. At this moment, Zhu Tui's anger was indescribable. Did no one care about these kinds of people who maliciously harmed others? Zhu Tui was not willing to give him 5 minutes, much less 500,000. It was too effing disgusting. Senior, you're a public figure in the school. Do you think that you are in a good position to be spreading rumors and causing trouble? Zhu Tui asked after a moment's silence. I started a rumor. Lian Jinzhang's voice suddenly rose an octave. May I ask if my video is fake or if it has been spliced? The contents of the video are the truth, right? Excuse me. Deng Wei was crippled. Is that true? Zhu Tui was speechless. He could not answer that question. Then tell me, when did I start any rumors? HMPH, ignorant fool. Lian Jinzhang hung up the phone after he let out a cold grunt. Communication failed. The students from the School of Enlightened Mind became even more furious. Anyone could tell that Lian Jinzhang was trying to extort money from them. Students, we'll report him. We'll call the disciplinary division and the publicity department to report him. Don't believe that the school would ignore something that they already know. The student representative, Rong Yuyang, and the 14 students from the School of Enlightened Mind aside from Zhu Tui all turned on their communication devices. Some called, some took screenshots, and some reported the incident. Less than 10 minutes later, Rong Yuyang suddenly let out a cry of surprise. Look quickly. The #1 trending video on the campus has changed. Our report had an effect. Rong Yuyang, who had clicked into the video midway, hesitated. The video did not change. It only changed its name. Our report only made it change its title. Rong Yuyang was very frustrated and angry. A mystery branch new student defeated an extreme branch new student and crippled him. The headline had been changed to this. It was still very explosive. The number of clicks and comments was still increasing rapidly. The 15 students in the class discussed the disciplinary division's reply. It was a little disgusting. Did Lian Jinzhang start a rumor? No, the video he sent was the truth. He only uploaded the process of the third battle. What about crippling the other party? It was also the truth. There had been a problem with the previous title. Now, there were no problems with the title. That was because what he announced was the truth. Who could say that he was spreading rumors? However, he did not release the entire video. While they were discussing, the time for class arrived. Mr. Bian, the vice teacher, arrived with a large black frame. When he arrived, he noticed that the atmosphere in the classroom was not right. He inquired about the situation and saw that Mr. Bian was frowning. This is not right. As the teacher in charge, Mr. Wen should step forward first. I'll contact him. Mr. Wen, it's like this. Have you seen the hottest video? Yes, based on the incident in your class, public opinion is not good for the mystery branch and Zhu Tui. I think that you should take the initiative to make an announcement. You are also the vice teacher of the School of Superbs. You have the right to protect the students and redeem your reputation. Bian Yuan made a call to Wen Xiao. I understand. I've already submitted an incident report with the disciplinary division and the school administration. Let's wait for the school to deal with the situation. Oh, no, Mr. Wen. Beep, beep. Wen Xiao immediately hung up. Bian Yuan, who had always been gentle, became angry. How could Wen Xiao do this? Chapter 70, Evidence 2. Zhu Tui's expression also became a little ugly. At this moment, Zhu Tui was certain that Mr. Wen Xiaowen harbored ill intentions toward him. If he really treated him well, he would be able to suppress the commotion with an announcement. However, if the teacher in charge, Wen Xiao, did not step forward, it would be more troublesome if the others, such as Mr. Bian Yuan, wanted to make a public announcement. They would have to contact other parties. Let me contact Miss An. She is the vice chairman of the School of Enlightened Mind. Her words carry more weight. Don't be anxious. The video is there. It'll be fine. Bian Yuan made a call. However, An Xiaozu's call could not get through. She might be conducting experiments or training. Students, we can also repost more of these videos. We can get the other students to repost them for us when we send red packets. We can also contact the other students to repost the video. The truth is out there. Would he be able to overturn the situation? Rong Yuyang's call to action had some effect. However, as a new student who had just entered the school not too long ago, his connections are simple. Doing so would indeed have a slight effect. However, it was rather difficult to create an impact. He would not even be able to enter the top 30, much less the top 10 of the hottest topics on the campus. Thank you. You guys can go to your classes now. I have to go out for a while, Zhu Tui suddenly said. Why are you going? Oh, I'm going to report it. Zhu Tui headed straight for the disciplinary division after he left the School of Enlightened Mind classroom. Zhu Tui had already understood the situation. Lian Jinzang was taking advantage of the situation. Many people had no idea where to start when they encountered such a situation. What he said is the truth. What can you do to him? Conscience. Lian Jinzang had done similar deeds on the internet. He had succeeded too. He had taken advantage of such a loophole. Many students would at most call the disciplinary division to complain when they encountered such a situation. However, to the disciplinary division, they received countless complaints about the videos every day. How could they possibly investigate them all? Would the disciplinary division still be able to do their jobs then? They would not interfere as long as there were no problems with the video. Thus, under the complaints from his classmates, Lian Jinzang only had to change the title. However, that also meant that his complaints were effective. However, he did not use enough force. Most of the students avoided departments like the disciplinary division if they could. It was enough for them to make a complaint on the phone. Wasn't they asking for trouble by causing trouble at the disciplinary division? Under such a situation, a person like Lian Jinzang would succeed in his plot. However, Zhu Tui insisted on being a pain in the neck today. Zhu Tui received 2 more calls on his way to the disciplinary division. They were all famous producers of trending news on the campus. They had over 20,000 fans and over 30,000 people. They only discussed one matter with Zhu Tui. They were going to help Zhu Tui release a complete video to clarify the matter. Of course, it was not free. Zhu Tui had to pay 200,000. Zhu Tui did not have that much money. However, he saw a chain of benefits. The school was also a society. This was a small society of genetic newcomers. Even a trending video would involve a large number of benefits. The disciplinary division was set up at the border of the Extreme Branch Institute and the Mystery Branch Institute. It was a grayish-black building that looked rather solemn. Student, what's the matter? Teacher, I want to make a report. Someone is intentionally slandering a student, sowing discord between the Extreme Branch and Mystery Branch students, and is using a trending video to maliciously extort and corrupt the school's rules. At this moment, Zhu Tui did not mind blowing the matter out of proportion. He made the matter sound as if it was bigger than the heavens. The teacher from the disciplinary division who was serving Zhu Tui got a shock. Coupled with the fact that Zhu Tui's face had not fully recovered, he quickly led Zhu Tui to the side to understand the situation. The teacher from the disciplinary division who was receiving Zhu Tui heaved a sigh of relief when he heard Zhu Tui and saw the video. He had thought that something major had happened. So it was this video that caused the trouble. Student Zhu Tui, there are no problems with the video itself. There have been no technological changes. At the moment, he has not violated any of the school rules. What he said is the truth. Regarding the recording, in the recording, he said that he wanted $500,000, but he immediately said that it was a joke. That cannot be used as evidence for the punishment. Zhu Tui immediately stood up and barged into the room before the teacher in charge could finish his sentence. Hey, what are you doing? This is the chairman's office. You can't barge in if there's nothing wrong. The teacher in charge came to stop Zhu Tui. At the same time, a few other teachers heard the commotion and came to stop Zhu Tui. However, Zhu Tui was sneaky. He had already rushed to the door of the first vice chairman's office when the teacher arrived to stop him. He knocked on the door. Soon, someone came out from inside. Wang Ruti. He was the vice chairman of the disciplinary division and currently managed the daily operations of the division. What's going on? The teacher from the disciplinary division had an ugly expression when he heard Wang Ruti's question. The teacher in charge had explained the situation to him just now. Wang Ruti also accessed the trending news on the campus after he heard Zhu Tui's explanation. He started comparing the 2 videos based on what Zhu Tui told him. He frowned a few minutes later. There's a problem with Eternity Begins. The intention of this video's intentional guidance is too obvious. He clearly had bad intentions. Even though the video had not been tampered with and was an original, the public opinion of this video was completely different now that they were at each other's throats. It was the opposite of the original video. Furthermore, just as Zhu Tui had said, this was intentionally trying to drive a wedge between the extreme branch and the mystery branch. Even though there is competition between the extreme branch and the mystery branch, we will also be comrades in the future. How could he do that? He actually dared to direct the tide of the conflict. He sure has guts. After he said that, Wang Ruti said, "Deal with it. Block and remove this video immediately. This kind of trend cannot happen. Also, the account, Eternity Begins, account will be temporarily banned." We would see if we needed to deal with the situation further after the investigation. Also, deal with similar incomplete videos as well. Thank you, Vice Chairman Wang. There's no need to thank me. We did not do our job well. Vice Chairman Wang, I also want to report the person who uploaded the video, Lian Jinzhang, for using the video to direct public opinion and extort money from the students. Please deal with the matter, Vice Chairman Wang, Zhu Tui said. What happened? Wang Ruti asked. The teacher from the disciplinary division explained, there was indeed a recording. In the recording, Lian Jinzhang asked for $500,000. However, he immediately said that it was a joke, that he was teasing Zhu Tui. There's no way to prove it. Wang Ruti, the vice chairman of the disciplinary division, also listened to the recording. He furrowed his brow and said, Student Zhu Tui, to tell you the truth, I can also tell that Lian Jinzhang is extorting you. The later words should be his cover. However, this charge was already a crime. However, there had to be evidence if he was to be convicted. The recording could be overturned because of the latter half. It was normal for students to joke around. A conscience cannot be used as evidence for a crime. At this point, Wang Ruti added, how about this? I'll follow up with the investigation. It's alright, Vice Chairman Wang. I still have evidence. I can prove that he had extorted money from me, Zhu Tui suddenly said. What evidence? Even the vice chairman of the disciplinary division, Wang Ruti, was curious now. If there is any concrete evidence, leave this matter to me. Chapter 71, Protecting the Spirit of Resistance 1. Vice Chairman Wang, look at the trending video release number of Eternity Begins. There are many deleted videos. Even though the video has been deleted, there are still traces of it being released, Zhu Tui said. Wang Ruti knitted his brows. Isn't it normal to delete a video after it has been uploaded for some time? At this point, Wang Ruti's expression suddenly froze. He then stood up abruptly as a murderous aura assaulted him. Are you saying that this incident where Lian Jinzhang extorted you with the video and then used a joke as a cover is not an isolated case? He is a repeat offender. Zhu Tui shrugged, speechless. Of course. Otherwise, how could he have done it so smoothly? Then, those deleted videos might have been deleted after he succeeded. That's what I mean. Of course, it's impossible that all of the videos he deleted involve extortion. But a portion of them must be, Zhu Tui said. Vice Chairman Wang, actually, all you need to do is to check the time period when Lian Jinzhang's personal bank account received a large sum of money, then investigate the videos that have been deleted during this time period. You can then look at the students involved in the videos. Then, you can find the corresponding student to investigate the matter. That would. Wang Ruti made a stopping gesture. The disciplinary division might not be able to survive if they needed a student like Zhu Tui to teach them how to solve a case and find the evidence. I didn't expect that the popular video producer in the school would be targeting students for extortion. If you did not come, would we not know that something like this happened here? 500,000. He really had a large appetite. Isn't he afraid of bursting? Wang Ruti let out a cold laugh. His subordinates beside him felt a chill run down their spines. The vice chairman of the disciplinary division was someone that even his people feared if he got angry. Vice Chairman Wang, I won't lie to you. Actually, my classmates, Mr. Bian, and I have shared and promoted the complete video that involves me. However, because of his connections and his fans, we could not enter the top ranks of the school's trending videos. However, two seniors contacted me on the way here and said that $200,000 is enough to make my full video enter the top 5 trending topics on the campus. It will solve the crisis of public opinion for me. Zhu Tui was not afraid of the situation blowing up now. Wang Ruti's expression turned even colder. It looks like we really need to rectify the school's trending video. The publicity department sure manages it well. At this point, Wang Ruti suddenly said, "All right, you don't have to worry about the rest of the matter. Let the school decide on the course of action. Also, this is negligence on our part. We will release a complete video of your incident on the official website of the disciplinary division and push it to the top of the trending videos on the campus to help you clarify the situation. As for what the students say, that is their freedom. Thank you, Vice Chairman Wang." Zhu Tui left the disciplinary division office after he expressed his thanks. Zhu Tui had just left when Wang Ruti let out a cold grunt. "Do you still need me to teach you how to do your job? They said that the disciplinary division was in charge of trivial matters all day long. However, you did not notice the massive tumor that is lurking right under our noses. You're not even as good as a student." While they were speaking, Wang Ruti's communication device rang. He had received a message. Wang Ruti suddenly said after he had a look, "The principal is going to hold a video conference with the school committee in 3 hours. I want the results. Any problems?" "No problem." Inside the Mystery Branch Physical Training Hall, Lian Jinzhang was sweating profusely as he went through physical training and reflexes. Even though he was from the School of Superbs of the Mystery Branch Institute, he had to train his stamina and reflexes. Superbs who did not train their stamina and reflexes were all weaklings. In the battle for the Donghua list, anyone who got close to him would be instantly killed. However, his communication device suddenly beeped. He had received 3 notifications in a row. Under normal circumstances, these kinds of notifications were either because his best friend had something urgent to tell him or something important. Lian Jinzhang quickly stopped his training to read the message. His expression became extremely ugly when he read the message. FCK. Darn it, who's messing with me? F*CK, which idiot is causing trouble? Not only did they block my account, but they also locked onto my personal information. I can't even make a new account. Lian Jinzhang looked at the notifications with an ugly expression. The first message was to inform him that the video he had sent just now had been deleted. The second message was to notify him about the account, Eternity Begins. The account was temporarily banned and was pending an investigation. The third message was to inform him that all of the video releases under his account had been temporarily banned. He was to wait for the investigation and was unable to create a new account. 3 consecutive messages made Lian Jinzhang extremely angry. He had managed this account for more than 2 years and had used various means to obtain his current results. It was his cash cow. The only reason he managed to get into the top 100 of the Year 3 Donghua list and even the last place on the Donghua overall rankings was the resources he obtained from his cash cow for his training. So how could he not be angry now that the account was blocked? Zhu Tui. It must be that bastard Zhu Tui. Lian Jinzhang called Zhu Tui without thinking. Lad, you did it. On the other end of the line, Zhu Tui froze. He immediately reacted. The disciplinary division must have taken over the title. Senior Lian, I don't have $500,000, so I could only be a real pain in the butt. Chapter 72, Protecting the Spirit of Resistance 2. Very good, lad, I'll remember you. There was no point in saying anything more. Lian Jinzhang hung up the phone and started to think. Zhu Tui was a new student. He would definitely take revenge if he had the chance in the future. However, the problem now was how to restore his money tree. The only people who could block his account and information about him were the disciplinary division. Lian Jinzhang had a bad feeling when he thought about the disciplinary division. My account should be released after some time, right? I've done this in the past. Nothing happened. The matter today, including the past, didn't leave any loopholes. Lian Jinzhang consoled himself. What he did not know was that his misfortune had just begun. Zhu Tui had not returned to his classroom when he continuously received notifications from his classmates. Well done. You're amazing, class monitor. Good job, class monitor. Clearly, the students had seen the changes to the trending video uploaded by Eternity Begins. They also saw the full video that was pinned at the top of the disciplinary division's official website. Zhu Tui smiled as he replied to them. He had basically done all he could to save himself. What happened next would depend on how the school dealt with the situation. Currently, Zhu Tui only had one task: attend class. He had to study hard and become stronger every day. That was not a slogan. This was a desire. After today's incident, Zhu Tui suddenly realized something. He had to get stronger. He had to become stronger in every aspect. It did not matter if it was power or influence. For example, if Zhu Tui managed to get onto the Year 1 Longhua list, even if he wasn't the dragon, he would also be one of the tigers. That would mean that everyone would respond to his call. Lian Jinzang would not be able to extort him just because he wanted to. As the official website of the disciplinary division released the top-rated video, several students cried out that they had been tricked. Several students even started to scold Deng Wei on the spot. They scolded Deng Wei for beating him up. He deserved it. Of course, there were also some students who felt that Deng Wei deserved it. But wasn't it crippling him too much now? Most of the new students in the Waxia Genetic Evolution College had the ability to think for themselves. The comments section started to debate about this again. There were even students who criticized the banned account of Eternity Begins in the comments section. Just as the comments section of the disciplinary division's official website became extremely lively, the temporary school committee of the Waxia Genetic Evolution College also convened a video conference. "Is everyone here?" Wen Xinglan's voice rang out from the venue. Principal Wen, other than the chairman of the disciplinary division, the dean of the mystery branch, and a few other school committees who are out on missions, everyone else is here. Wen Xiao is also here, the dean of the academic affairs office, Yan Chen, reported. "Then let's have a meeting. Everyone, I've convened a temporary meeting with the school board today because of a certain matter. Can you guys look at this video and see how we should deal with the situation?" A complete video of the battle between Zhu Tui and Deng Wei started to play after Wen Xinglan spoke. "Alright, you guys are done watching it. What do you guys think?" In the video conference, the first to speak was the vice chairman of the Extreme Branch Institute, Zhou Wenji. Based on the video, there must be a reason for this. However, isn't crippling the target a little too much? Furthermore, he was a new student in the 3 months phase. Wouldn't that mean that he would kill people wantonly if the 3 months period was over? I think that this trend should not be raised. We have to severely punish him for the sake of the school's long-term stability. Punish him severely. Is that your opinion? When Xinglan patted the table. Do other people have the same opinion, or? Our mystery branch believes that this is a normal battle drill. Furthermore, based on the analysis of the video, it seems like Deng Wei was the one who provoked the other party first. Zhu Tui had held back twice during his low-level instantiation of the mental orb. Yet, Deng Wei did not know when to stop. Furthermore, he had been extremely heavy-handed. Every attack was concentrated on the unprotected area. It had exceeded the scope of a practice run. This was an actual battle. I think that there are no problems with Zhu Tui's counterattack. The dean of the mystery branch was out on a mission. The person who spoke was the executive vice chairman of the mystery branch, Wei Dajang. There's no problem with retaliating. However, crippling him would be going overboard. Han Qingsong, the vice principal of the Waxia Genetic Evolution College and the dean of the Extreme Branch Institute, spoke. There's no need for severe punishments, but there should be necessary punishments. This cannot be sustained, the vice chairman of the publicity department, Kong Linfang, declared. What about the disciplinary division? I think that Zhu Tui is not responsible for this. Under such a situation, resisting is normal, Wang Ruti said. The Academic Affairs Office. Principal Wen, from the entire video and the analysis of the incident, we can see from the video that Deng Wei fought with Che Zan that he was the one who provoked him. He really has evil intentions. Deng Wei had taken the initiative to request for a recording even before the battle. His intentions were questionable. Deng Wei will bear the main responsibility for this matter, the Academic Affairs Office's Yan Chen said. Hearing this, the principal, Wen Xinglan, nodded. He suddenly looked toward Wen Xiao, who was also in the room. Mr. Wen, you are the teacher in charge. What do you say? Wen Xiao was a little nervous. I am partly to blame. I did not control the rhythm of the lesson well. Pa. Wen Xinglan slammed his hands on the table and stood up. He then roared at Wen Xiao. You also know that you are responsible. You do not have a responsibility. Instead, you have a major responsibility. You should have severely warned Deng Wei about this when he first fought Zhu Tui. But you did not. Instead, you allowed the situation to develop. You failed in your duty. Wen Xiao, who had been reprimanded, stood up with a cold sweat. Chapter 73, Protecting the Spirit of Resistance 3. Also, you have ulterior motives after the fact. After the incident, you only need to contact the Academic Affairs Office of the Mystery Branch and release the complete video on their official account. How could this matter have caused such a commotion then? At this point, Wen Exinglan let out a cold laugh. I don't want to talk about the shady dealings within the Mystery Branch. You guys are free to fight. However, the premise of fighting for it was that you had to maintain a fair heart. Remember, you are the teacher first. Only then would there be conflict of interest. After he said his piece, Wen Exinglan turned to the academic director, Yan Chen, and said, Wen Xiao has an undeniable responsibility in the handling of this matter. You guys can give an opinion on how to deal with the situation after we are done. All right, Principal Wen, Yan Chen replied. Principal Wen, Mr. Wen is indeed responsible. However, we should also deal with the student who crippled the student, right? Zhou Wenji, the vice chairman of the Extreme Branch Institute, said. A punishment in order to prevent similar incidents from happening again. Vice Principal Han Kingsong spoke. His words carried a lot of weight. Wen Exinglan laughed when he heard this. Ridiculous. Didn't you guys watch the video? Even this needed a minor punishment. What do you want our students to do in the future? If our students don't dare to resist when their opponents are intentionally trying to humiliate them, then why would we nurture such a student? Do I have to kneel when I see ferocious extraterrestrial enemies in the future? If we have to punish even a student who had put up a resistance despite being intentionally humiliated, if we can't even protect the spirit of resistance sprouted from the intentional suppression and humiliation of the student, would the students still have the spirit of resistance when they face powerful invaders in the future? Would they still dare to resist? Where does the future of the Waxia Genetic Evolution College lie if we do not have the spirit to resist? Where is the future of Waxia? Where is the future of humanity? Principal Wen Exinglan was impassioned. He started a soul-like interrogation. Even the vice principal of the Extreme Branch Institute, Han Kingsong, could not refute such an interrogation. Zhu Tui would obtain complete victory if they got to that point. I propose that the school will release an announcement later. Wen Xiao will take responsibility and deal with the situation accordingly. These two students would not have any punishments. However, the teacher in charge of the faculty needs to have a word with them. What do you guys think? No objections. No objections. Wen Exinglan's decision was unanimously approved. However, the school committee was not done. When the meeting was about to end, Wang Ruti suddenly sent a document to Wen Exinglan. Principal Wen, look at this document. It is something that our disciplinary division had just investigated. A person who released a trending video on the campus is actually using the fact that he has a large number of fans as an excuse. He continuously released videos that misled the public and tried to influence the public opinion by extorting money from the students. Currently, we have investigated 3 cases. At least 2 cases are still under investigation. Wang Ruti's words were like a bomb. It instantly shocked everyone. What? How is that possible? Kong Linfang stood up abruptly. He had a look of disbelief. Wen Exinglan slowly flipped open the document. Is this true? Of the 3 confirmed cases, other than Lian Jinzhang's personal statement, we have a complete chain of evidence. The sum of money is as high as 900,000. That is a crime. He is a cancer of the school. Principal Wen Exinglan swiped his finger and shared the document with the other school committees. The school's publicity department is responsible for the trending videos. What does the school's publicity department say? Wen Exinglan's expression turned dark. Kong Linfang, the vice chairman of the publicity department, quickly flipped through the documents. He had a shocked expression. Why is he so daring? If you, as the vice chairman, can't manage the publicity department well, then head to the intergalactic battlefield and get the chairman to return in advance. Wen Exinglan's voice was very cold. Chapter 74, Activating the First Level 1. A new day had begun. In the eyes of most students, last night had been peaceful. It was still a beautiful night of training. However, attentive students would notice several abnormalities. More accurately, many of the popular video producers in the school were howling in grief early in the morning. Some even howled in the middle of the night. The painstaking efforts they had put in over the years had all been for naught. It's not that their accounts were blocked. Instead, it was because the interface and mechanism of the trending website had changed. In the past, whenever a video producer like them released their latest video, the app would tell all of their fans. It was a notification to tell the fans that the person they're following had released a new video. That was also an important source of influence for the people who released the videos. It was also their source of money. Money was not limited to people like Lian Jinzang who did not follow the right path. There were also advertisements and other sources of income. The Waxia Genetic Evolution College's genetic newcomer social circle was a small-scale business society. It was a society that could afford to spend more money. The accumulation of all kinds of income was rather substantial. However, the notification had been cancelled. Only when fans actively looked at their main page would they realize that they had released a new video. They could predict that their influence would decrease drastically in the future. Their income would also decrease drastically. Many of the video producers were furious and suggested that they look for the publicity department. How could the school be like this? They only wanted to earn some money from the hard work and entertain the public. They were very obedient to the school. All of the achievements that they had accumulated over the years were gone just like that. They were indignant. However, a piece of gossip that followed caused everyone to shiver. The famous video creator of the Waxia Genetic Evolution College, Eternity Begins, Lian Jinzang, was taken away by the people from the Special Intelligence Division stationed in the Waxia Genetic Evolution College. This piece of news instantly infuriated many people. The kind that blew up their hair. The difference in departments meant that the nature of the matter was different. The intervention of the disciplinary division would be handled internally by the school, no matter how serious the matter was. Getting expelled was the most severe punishment. However, the fact that the Special Intelligence Division was directly arresting someone meant that they were suspected of a crime. At the same time, it also meant that the disciplinary division had agreed to the matter. In the Waxia Genetic Evolution College, it was impossible for the Special Intelligence Division to take the students away without informing the disciplinary division. This meant that the matter was serious. Many of the producers immediately shut their mouths. At noon, they received another message. Another video producer was taken away by the Special Intelligence Division. At the same time, 3 other video producers were brought to the disciplinary division for questioning. Many insiders roughly understood that the things that Lian Jinzang did were exposed. Rumors started to spread everywhere. Some students noticed that the name of the standing vice chairman of the school's publicity department, Kong Linfang, was gone. There was a rumor that Kong Linfang, the vice chairman of the school's publicity department, had been sent to the intergalactic battlefield in advance for rotational defense because of the viral videos. To put it nicely, he was sent there in advance. In reality, he had been temporarily sent away. At noon, while the students were discussing among themselves, the Academic Affairs Office issued a few consecutive announcements. The first announcement was especially shocking. The third-year student from the Waxia Genetic Evolution College, Lian Jinzang, and the third-year student, Lu Chang, had used the influence of their school's video account as a base point to extort students. The sum of money involved was 1.4 million and 600,000 respectively. The situation was extremely serious and had a negative impact. The case had been handed over to the judiciary for further investigation and further action. Handing them over to the judiciary meant that they were completely done for. Getting an expulsion order was an extravagant hope. Lian Jinzang was done for this time. The second announcement was related to Mr. Wen Xiao. Professor Wen Xiao, vice chairman of the School of Superbs of the Mystery Branch, did not notice the abnormalities in the battle in time and adjusted the state of the battle when he was giving the first-year students a lesson on the application of actual combat of the Mystery Branch. He had failed to fulfill his duty and responsibilities. He had taken immense responsibility for the matter of Deng Wei's disability. He did not manage to clarify the matter in time after the incident and trigger public opinion. The school had decided after some research that Wen Xiao would be stripped of his position as the vice chairman of the School of Superbs. Wen Xiao would not be able to receive an excellent rating or advance to the next level for the next year. The school would deduct the additional allowances for the next year and will write a self-reflection. The third announcement was about Zhu Tui and Deng Wei. The Huaxia Genetic Evolution College had always encouraged competition. Only through intense competition could a true powerhouse be born. Only then could innovation be created. Only through intense competition could more people improve at a rapid rate. However, malicious competition was not encouraged. Thus, the school would give Deng Wei and Zhu Tui a stern warning for the incident and make them reflect on their actions. The entire school was shocked by the three announcements. This was especially so for the final announcement. Many students felt that it was rather unreasonable. Why would the person who was crippled and the person who caused that receive the same treatment? They had not even made any angry protests when they realized that the Academic Affairs Office had sent a link to the entire school. The link was a video of the hottest topic in the school. It was a trending video released by the Academic Affairs Office. It was also a video of Zhu Tui fighting Deng Wei yesterday. However, the perspective was different. The video that Lian Jinzang had sent yesterday was from the perspective of Deng Wei. However, the video that was released by the Academic Affairs Division was captured by the surveillance cameras in the multi-purpose hall. Deng Wei had challenged Zhu Tui from the School of Enlightened Mind twice. The intensity of Deng Wei's battle with Che Zhan was a stark contrast to the intensity of Zhu Tui's battle. What caused the entire school to be in an uproar was that Deng Wei had actively asked for a video recording before he fought Zhu Tui. This was Deng Wei intentionally causing trouble and humiliating Zhu Tui. It was confirmed. No need to say any more. He deserved it. The School of Enlightened Mind of the Mystery Branch was useless to begin with. They did not have any exceptional abilities. Deng Wei, a level E genetic liberator of the Extreme Branch, actively provoked Zhu Tui and even took the initiative to record a video. No one would believe him if he said that he did not do it intentionally. The matter was finally settled at this point. Of course, there were still people who sympathized with Deng Wei. After all, he had been crippled. However, everyone had different thoughts. The school could not interfere with that. Wen Xiao felt extremely uncomfortable when he saw the announcement. He did not care about the rest of the announcements. What he cared about was that he was immediately stripped of his position as the vice-chairman of the Mystery Branch Institute School of Superbs. This made Wen Xiao feel so much pain that he could not breathe. He had managed a major class for 3 consecutive years for the sake of being a vice-chairman. Even though it would not affect his training, it would definitely affect his abilities. With this vice-chairman, he would be able to jump another level and become the chairman. If he jumped again, he would become the vice-chairman of the school and become one of the members of the school committee. A member of the Huaxia Genetic Evolution College's committee could enter the Huaxia Genetic Committee. However, he had been dismissed from his post and returned to square one. He wasted several years in this process. FCK, am I that unlucky? Wen Xiao had a dark expression. It was indeed an accident that Deng Wei had beaten up Zhu Tui. However, such accidents were too common in the Huaxia Genetic Evolution College. It was normal for them to be injured in class. Everything would be fine after they were treated. It was free anyway. However, Zhu Tui had been too brutal when he attacked. He had immediately crippled the teenager. The matter had blown up, and then... Was Zhu Tui born to go against me? At that thought, Wen Xiao stood up abruptly. No, I have to look for the dean. I have to look for Vice-Chairman Wei. This matter is not only related to me. Why should I be the scapegoat? At noon, in a dormitory in Area A, Yuan Shu suddenly appeared in front of Ma Zixu. Did you have anything to do with J. Lian Jinzang extorting money from Zhu Tui? Yuan Shu suddenly asked. No, the dark-skinned Ma Zixu shook his head in a hurry. You really didn't. Why did I hear that you had drinks with Lian Jinzang? Yuan Shu asked. We just got to know each other. Halfway through his sentence, Ma Zixu suddenly said a little anxiously, Brother Yuan, I only mentioned it casually when I was drinking. I told Lian Jinzang that Zhu Tui has low-grade level D rights, and that he must be very valuable. Just the 1,000 contribution points were worth a fortune. I think he might have taken those words to heart. It's all right, you didn't directly participate in the matter of Lian Jinzang, right? Yuan Shu asked. No. That's good. Oh, yes, You should do less of such child's play in the future, Yuan Shu suddenly said. Brother Yuan, what do you mean? The 3 months of protection is up. If I have the chance, I'll crush Zhu Tui in the Longhu arena and completely defeat him. Or perhaps, I could choose not to take action. However, once I did, I would make sure that my enemies could never recover. This kind of child's play will only make your enemies wary and even look down on you. It will be useless. Yuan Shu left after he said his piece. Ma Zixu was left alone with a dark expression. But his face had always been dark. Zhu Tui once again became a famous student in the Waxia Genetic Evolution College. The pinned surveillance footage from the Academic Affairs Office transformed Zhu Tui from an abuser to a victim. Even though he still did not have a good reputation in the extreme branch, they no longer harbored any fundamental hatred for the other party. Most of the students could return to a rational perspective. Zhu Tui continued his fulfilling and nervous college life. He started to make more reasonable use of his time. He made use of every second he had to train. In the past, he would train at night. He first forged his consciousness every night to train the explosive power of his mind power. Then, he had to focus and train to activate his genetic base points. He sleeps before his mind power is completely depleted. Then he will feel energetic after a night of rest. Under such a situation, he could only train once a day. However, Zhu Tui would need 4 to 6 hours at most to fully recover his depleted mind power after he emptied his mind and entered a state of deep sleep during meditation. He felt that he was wasting time. Zhu Tui started to plan out a new training time. For example, he could train for 40 minutes after lunch. He would use a bottle of level E energy restoration elixir, then seize the time to take an hour-long nap. A portion of the mind power that was expended would be recovered. Zhu Tui fell asleep extremely quickly after he practiced meditation for more than a decade. He did not have any trouble of not being able to sleep like the other students. After the physical training in the afternoon, Zhu Tui first consumed a few level F energy restoration pills and made use of the time to train. He then forged his consciousness and the explosive power of his mind power. Then, he went to eat. When he returned, he slept for another hour and a half to recover his mind power. It was only 8:30 in the night after doing all that. Other students might have trouble sleeping at night if they slept an hour and a half in the afternoon, but it was not a problem for Zhu Tui. He then started to study theory and read. He trained for another hour at night before falling asleep at midnight. Time was tight. The time he spent in training had increased by more than half. The energy he expended increased again. However, his training also progressed rapidly. On Sunday morning, Zhu Tui, who was now brimming with energy, was not in a hurry to get off the bed. He consumed a bottle of level E energy restoration elixir and entered the illusory introspective state. He then started the training that he had not finished yesterday night. 30 minutes later, Zhu Tui opened his eyes. The 36th genetic base point, which was also the last genetic base point, of the first level of version 4.9 Mind Concentration Foundation Forging Technique had been activated. Chapter 75, Breaking the Sense 1. As of today, the 36 genetic base points in the first level of the Mind Concentration Foundation Forging Technique, version 4.9, had all been activated. Counting the time, it had been less than a month since he started training. 4.5 weeks had passed. It had just been 31 days. Within 31 days, Zhu Tui activated a total of 29 genetic base points. In total, Zhu Tui had activated 49 genetic base points. In terms of numbers, he should be in the lead, but he would be considered one of the last in terms of the genetic ability chains activated. Students from the Extreme Branch and Mystery Branch had activated 3 to 4 genetic ability chains. There were even some who activated 5. Of course, there were different genetic ability chains. Some genetic ability chains could be activated with 3 to 5 genetic base points. The value of those abilities was also different. Zhu Tui could only activate a genetic ability chain after he activated all 36 genetic base points. Other than activating a few genetic base points, some of Zhu Tui's physical attributes would also undergo a slight enhancement. Like memory, or vision. Of course, the most important ability was low-level instantiation. Even though Zhu Tui would have been able to instantiate his abilities at a low level a week ago, he had only managed to fully activate a genetic ability chain now according to the version 4.9 of Mind Concentration Foundation forging technique. Now, Zhu Tui would be certified as a level F genetic liberator if he applied to test his genetic ability. Yes, the kind that had all of the relevant documents and information online. However, it was meaningless. It would not increase Zhu Tui's current treatment, nor would it bring him any benefit. The personal treatment of a new student would only undergo another drastic change after the 3-month growth period. When the time came, the basis for the decision would be the number and value of the genetic ability chains. It was not based on the number of genetic base points he had when he just entered the school. Within 31 days, Zhu Tui consumed a total of 79 bottles of level E energy restoration elixirs. Other than the 5 bottles he received for his level treatment, the rest of it was his own money. He spent over $370,000. The discount an individual's low-grade level D rights provided was not much. Zhu Tui's wallet had rapidly shrunk over a third of its original size. Next month, Zhu Tui estimated that he would consume over 90 level E energy restoration elixirs. He might even consume 100 of them. Recently, Zhu Tui's reasonable plan for the time he needed to train had caused the energy consumption to increase. Zhu Tui's constantly increasing mind power also continuously increased the time he took to train and the energy he expended. He felt a little heartache for the money. However, he did not regret his decision. The enhancement in his abilities this month was very obvious. Even during this week, Zhu Tui had made startling improvements 6 days after his conflict with Donghua. Just now, Zhu Tui noticed that his mind power did not surge after he activated the 36th genetic base point and fully activated the first level. However, it became clearer and more stable. He could not see or touch them, but that was the feeling he got. The mental all he condensed became sturdier and more stable. The mental all still could not move at high speeds to injure its target. However, Zhu Tui could now apply more power to the mental all. 6 days ago, Donghua had been able to shatter Zhu Tui's invisible mental all with a kick. And he would only get a bruise when he charged over and hit it. However, if Donghua continued to charge at him without knowing anything now, he would definitely bleed from his head and receive a concussion. If it was more graphic, the strength of Zhu Tui's mental all 6 days ago had been like the strength of an ordinary brick. However, 6 days later, the strength of Zhu Tui's mental all became as hard as stone. Many people could smash bricks with the bare hands. Not many people could smash rocks with the bare hands. More importantly, Zhu Tui realized that he could now condense and set up 2 mental alls. With the 2 mental alls, Zhu Tui could use his mind power in battle even though the practicality of his mind power was not great. It would be different if he used it in battle and had greater flexibility. Of course, these were not the only benefits he obtained from completing the first level of the Mind Concentration Foundation forging technique. Zhu Tui activated his mind power slightly and immediately covered his surroundings with his mind power. 6 meters. The radius of his mental senses had reached the limit of the length and width of his room. It was much wider than his room. Zhu Tui even saw into the room of his roommate, Luo Murong. Zhu Tui's first reaction was a little strange when he saw the situation in Luo Murong's room. Fortunately, he is a male roommate. If he was a female roommate. Instantly, Zhu Tui came up with countless ideas. In the room next door, Luo Murong was practicing a stance technique. Having been roommates for a long time, this was the first time Zhu Tui was observing Luo Murong's room so clearly. In the room, aside from the antique decorations, what Zhu Tui saw the most were books. Paper books that are rarely seen nowadays. Most of the titles were ancient. The realistic meaning of the Shaolin Temple's 72 ultimate arts in the era of genetic evolution. The theory of the combination of martial arts and genetic evolution. Introduction to ancient martial arts. New genetic martial arts theory. The dialectical theory of Waxia's traditional training and genetic evolution. Speed is everything. These titles suddenly piqued Zhu Tui's curiosity. Was this one of the reasons Luo Murong liked Hanfu? The books that Luo Murong read were things that Zhu Tui had only seen occasionally in television dramas. He had never come into contact with them. Today, under the observation of his mental senses, Zhu Tui suddenly saw a new world. Looking at Luo Murong's books, Zhu Tui realized that something as technological as genetic evolution could be combined with ancient martial arts, and traditional Waxia training in the genetic evolution era. With the stances that Luo Murong had practiced, also a form of ancient martial arts or some new martial arts. Luo Murong looked like he had been training for some time. His forehead was covered in sweat. However, there was a book in front of him. Luo Murong, who was training, would glance at it from time to time. This made Zhu Tui a little curious. Zhu Tui extended his mind power outward to get a better look at the contents of the book. There was a drawing of a mini-human with constantly changing movements on the flipped page. Every time the mini-human moved, a red spot would be marked at a different spot. However, at this instant, the expression of Luo Murong, who was training with his eyes lowered, changed drastically. His brows furrowed as he glared. Scram! His voice was like thunder. It was startling. Zhu Tui instantly fell out of the mental state he was in. However, even though he had withdrawn his mental senses, the thunderous roar just now still made Zhu Tui a little fearful. It seemed as though his mind was being affected and fluctuating. Zhu Tui was shocked. What kind of roar was that? Bang, bang, bang. There was a knock on the door. Zhu Tui opened the door to see Luo Murong, who was training in a traditional Han costume. It was you just now. Zhu Tui nodded, embarrassed. I'm sorry, I had a breakthrough just now and tried it out of curiosity. You managed to instantiate something at a low level in a month and have a sensory distance of over 4 meters. Not bad. However, you should not be so reckless next time. You should not spy on others with your mental senses. Many people, especially seniors and genetic evolvers, would specialize in training to have an ability that targeted that ability. You might receive a backlash or even be injured if you were not careful. When I roared just now, I realized that it might be you at the last minute and held back. Otherwise, you might have already been injured. Thank you, I won't do it again. Zhu Tui was very grateful. He had been a long-term cleaner in the dormitory for the past few weeks. It did not feel good. However, Zhu Tui enjoyed the attitude of his roommate today. This was the attitude a roommate should have. Oh, yes, what kind of genetic ability did you use just now? Luo Murong hesitated for a moment before replying. It's not purely a genetic ability. It is an ancient martial art that has been replicated through genetic evolution in the ancient martial arts school, the Lion's Roar. It can disrupt a person's heart and break large-scale mental senses. Zhu Tui was startled. There's such an ability. Of course, there are more kinds of genetic abilities than you can imagine. You guys have only just started. Luo Murong turned to leave after he said that. However, before he left, he said, you probed into my privacy with your mental senses just now. That is already going against the 13 rules of the dormitory rules. This is your first time. I don't want to say too much about you, but you have to continue with the hygiene of the dormitory next week. Zhu Tui opened his mouth but could not say anything. He had almost completely taken over the hygiene of the dormitory. He had been at it for 3 weeks. It would be 4 weeks if he counted the next week. However, his mental senses had been noticed by him just now. The little bit of goodwill Zhu Tui had for Luo Murong vanished again. Zhu Tui closed the door and continued to use his mental senses. This time, he used the hazy sensory state. He could clearly sense his surroundings within a 6-meter radius just now. If Zhu Tui used the hazy sensory state, he would be able to see things further away. Basically, Zhu Tui could vaguely sense the situation in Luo Murong's room. However, it was impossible for him to read the contents of the book. He could not even sense the title of the book. Zhu Tui's hazy senses passed through Luo Murong's body. He saw a very artistic painting hanging on Luo Murong's wall. He could not see the figure clearly. However, it felt very artistic. It might be because of the blurriness. Zhu Tui was elated. Due to his hazy senses, Luo Murong, who was training, did not notice anything even though he had been running around in his room for several minutes. This allowed Zhu Tui to come to a conclusion. He should use more of the hazy sensory state in the future. He had to be careful when he used the ultra version of his mental senses. On the one hand, it was because of what Luo Murong had said. It would attract trouble and even retaliation. On the other hand, he had to prevent himself from being blinded. Just now, Zhu Tui had extended his senses toward the neighboring dormitory, which was also room 1603. He almost vomited on the spot. There were several dozen pairs of strangely colored socks on the floor of the single room, as well as a pile of changed underwear at the corner of the bed. More importantly, there was a pile of used tissues on the ground. He didn't know what they were used for. Zhu Tui had a question in his heart after his battle with Deng Wei. Should he focus on cultivating mind power or train based on the premise that he could survive in battle? He had always been conflicted. However, now, Zhu Tui suddenly had an idea. To some extent, these two training directions did not conflict, especially with Zhu Tui. His training progressed faster than most of the students. Zhu Tui could focus on training his mind power and train in other areas when the progress of his mind power was extremely slow. For example, Zhu Tui could activate one genetic base point a day when he activated the first 24 genetic base points of the version 4.9 Mind Concentration Foundation forging technique. He might even activate 3 genetic base points every 2 days. However, activating the last 12 genetic base points took a longer time. The time it took to activate the ability increased. That was even when Zhu Tui increased his training time of his mind power, where it was constantly increasing. For example, Zhu Tui had used 5 bottles of level E energy restoration elixir to activate his 36th genetic base point. It had taken Zhu Tui 2 days to activate the point. Zhu Tui could foresee that it would take even longer for him to activate the 24 genetic base points in the second level of the Mind Concentration Foundation forging technique, version 4.9, much less the third level. When the time came, Zhu Tui could consider training other abilities if his training progress became extremely slow. Of course, Zhu Tui had to solve the problem of money for his training first. Missen said that even a genius would need at least half a year to complete the first level of the Mind Concentration Foundation forging technique. But I only did it in 4 weeks. Wouldn't that mean that I am a genius? And the super handsome kind? Zhu Tui got off the bed quickly after he gloated for a while longer. It was a Sunday. There were no classes in school, but Zhu Tui still had a mission. He had to go to the Genetic Research Institute. The treatment of a bottle of level E energy restoration elixir every month was enough to make Zhu Tui bend over backward. Chapter 76, Is It a Human, in the Incubator? I'm out on a mission. Some of the cultivation barns in the research rooms need fluids. I'll send you my room number. Go replenish it later. I'll raise your rights later. This is the procedure for hydration. There's nothing else. However, you have to wear a full set of protective gear before hydration. You must also be sanitized. You must not bring anything that contains your genetic information. Zhu Tui received a message from An Xiaozu while he was on his way to the Genetic Research Institute. Oh, yes, clean up the lounge area when you are free. Toss the fruits in the fridge away for me. They should be spoiled soon. Do as you deem fit. Zhu Tui felt a little dejected when he read the new message. He had to take care of the dormitory hygiene. He had to clean up the research institute himself. Had he entered the cleaning specialization? Even though he was cursing inwardly, Zhu Tui still had to take care of the hygiene. Hexu Tui was a little curious. Where did An Xiaozu go on a mission? It was definitely not close. In this day and age, large-scale transportation was rather risky in the wilderness where humans had been forced out because of the large size of transportation vehicles and the limitations of speed. Wild creatures evolved too quickly. As humans gradually left the deep forests for various reasons, the number of wild creatures became terrifying. However, individual vehicles, especially genetic newcomers like An Xiaozu who had immense abilities, could move rather quickly. The repulsive force flying car was the best means of transportation. Powerful abilities could also be used to deal with unexpected situations. The maximum speed of a repulsion force flying car was 500 km an hour. Depending on the individual's reflexes, the upper limit of their speed would be different. However, repulsion force flying cars were relatively smaller in size and load. The most common vehicles were one-person and two-person repulsion force flying cars. 4 to 5 people were considered large-scale repulsion force flying cars. They also had high requirements for their pilots. Otherwise, it would not have been as troublesome for Zhu Tui and the rest when school started. The average speed of a repulsion force flying car was between 200 to 300 km per hour. It also had the assistance of automatic driving. Under normal circumstances, a repulsion force flying car could travel from the east to the west of the Huaxia sector in 1 to 2 days. And Xiaozhu had left the week before Zhu Tui's battle with Deng Wei. It had been 2 weeks since she left. And Xiaozhu would have returned long ago if she was in the Huaxia sector. Zhu Tui suddenly had a startling thought. Could she have gone to the intergalactic battlefield to execute a mission? At that moment, Zhu Tui became a little worried about Xiaozhu's safety. However, Zhu Tui then laughed at himself. Why would he be worried about Xiaozhu? Xiaozhu was a level C genetic mutant. Furthermore, she was extremely powerful. She was an exception and became a professor at the Huaxia Genetic Evolution College. In other words, even though Xiaozhu was a genetic mutant, she had the strength of a genetic evolver. What was there to be worried about? Zhu Tui was an expert at scheduling. Even if he was not good at it, he had gained experience from continuously cleaning the dormitory for the past few weeks. He had to clean himself up after he was done with the hygiene. Furthermore, he had to be fully sanitized before going into the research rooms for hydration. Thus, he had to take care of the hygiene first. It would save him some effort of cleaning himself up. Hygiene was mainly done in the living and leisure areas. Actually, there was not much dust. The Research Institute number 14 was located underground. The ventilation channels were filtered through layers of filters. Mainly, it was the trash of the researchers. The peelings of the fruits in the trash can had rotted. The fruits in the fridge had basically all been spoiled. Bananas, tomatoes, apples, oranges, papaya, grapes. And Xiaozhu had eaten a lot of fruits. It looked like she earned a lot. Fruits were very expensive in this day and age. And he tossed them all away. Zhu Tui cleared the trash cans in the leisure area and living area. He was about to leave when he suddenly saw clothes in the washing machine. It was the kind that had been washed and dried but had not been hung up. And Xiaozhu left in a hurry. Was there an emergency? That was a judgment he made based on the details. Now, Zhu Tui faced a problem. Should he hang the clothes in the washing machine? There shouldn't be anything strange, right? He should just hang it. Zhu Tui decided to go all the way with the cleaning. Even though the clothes had dried, they might smell if it was not removed for a long time. There was really nothing strange in it. There were 2 pairs of jeans, a t-shirt, and a pair of short denim shorts. Zhu Tui was deep in thought as he hung the denim shorts. Why did he not see Xiaozhu walking around outside with these shorts? Her long legs, if she was wearing denim shorts. He wondered if her legs were fair or not. According to the message Xiaozhu sent him, there were a total of 4 research rooms that Zhu Tui needed to administer hydration. All of them were research rooms with blue cards. She had already given Zhu Tui the right. First, Zhu Tui cleared out the trash in the various research rooms. It smelled a little, but there was not much of it. After cleaning up the mess, Zhu Tui swiped his card and entered the first blue card research room. Zhu Tui was shocked the moment he entered the room. There were 40 tall incubators erected neatly in the blue card research room. It was taller than Zhu Tui. The incubator was entirely silver in color. He could not see what was inside. However, the display slots for the cultivation fluid outside the incubator had almost run out. According to Xiaozhu's instructions, Zhu Tui was going to give these incubation tanks some hydration. It was the cultivation fluid that Zhu Tui had collected from the supply center of the Genetic Research Institute. He scanned the code and uploaded the message. After obtaining the temporary passcode, Zhu Tui opened the large barrel of cultivation fluid and injected it into the injector. The cultivation fluid was greenish in color and had a sweet scent. However, it also smelled fishy. Zhu Tui was a little familiar with that scent. A few minutes later, Zhu Tui, who was continuously injecting the fluid, became startled. Wasn't that the smell of the level E energy restoration elixir he had been drinking recently? But the taste was a little different. This cultivation fluid was a little more pungent. With a thought, Zhu Tui immediately observed the cultivation fluid. Even though his mental senses were not like a microscope, it was definitely a magnifying glass. It did not matter when he was making an observation comparison. Zhu Tui reached a conclusion a few minutes later. This cultivation fluid was very similar to the level E energy restoration elixirs he often consumed. However, there were still differences. The level E energy restoration elixir he consumed had a higher purity and no impurities. This cultivation fluid was more like an elementary grade of the original fluid. Zhu Tui lacked level E energy restoration elixirs. However, he was not stupid. These research supplies might smell like level E energy restoration elixirs, but anyone who dared to take a puff would definitely be courting death. The mission was not difficult, but there were a large number of them. There were a total of 5 blue card research rooms and 200 incubators. Zhu Tui spent more than 2 hours replenishing the fluid. He was a little tired. His protective gear was airtight. He could almost take a bath in the suit. Zhu Tui sat on the ground and looked at the giant incubators. He was a little curious. Just what exactly was being nurtured in the incubators of the number 14 Research Institute? Zhu Tui made a gesture. Based on the size of the incubator, the things being nurtured inside were rather large. Under normal circumstances, the things cultivated in the research rooms were relatively smaller. It was rare to see something this large. Zhu Tui suddenly froze when he was gesturing. The incubator was a little taller than Zhu Tui. It was a rectangular chamber with an oval shape. Its overall length was much wider than Zhu Tui's shoulder, and the width of the incubation chamber was not small either. It was more than enough to fit a person like Zhu Tui. Could it be humans who were being cultivated here? A horrifying thought occurred to Zhu Tui. He could not help but think in that direction when that thought occurred to him. It was too possible. There were so many incubators, all of which were standing. Under normal circumstances, how could there be such a large creature for someone to nurture? It couldn't be that a tree was being nurtured inside, right? A tree could not be grown in a sealed incubator. Are there really humans in the incubator? Zhu Tui could feel his heart rate increasing. He observed the incubation chamber from various angles. He could not see anything inside. I'll try it out. She didn't say that I can't use my mental senses anyway. With a thought, Zhu Tui extended his mental strength toward the incubator. He wanted to see what was in the incubator clearly through his mental senses. However, Zhu Tui froze. He could not see it. The incubator was covered in a layer of silvery gray membrane. This silvery gray membrane blocked off Zhu Tui's mind power completely. He could not detect it at all. No matter how hard Zhu Tui tried, his mind power could not penetrate the membrane. He still could not see what was in the incubation chamber. Is this the nemesis of mental senses? Zhu Tui was a little dejected. In just a day, his mental senses had first been broken by Luo Murong, then blocked by a membrane at the number 14 Research Institute. Zhu Tui felt that some of his thoughts had crumbled. Mind power did not seem invincible. It had many natural enemies. Zhu Tui had encountered 2 of them today. This gave Zhu Tui many new understandings and ideas. The large rectangular incubator in the research room gave him too many surprises. This was especially so when he thought about how it could be, humans, being cultivated inside. Zhu Tui's shock reached its peak. Zhu Tui was still thinking about several questions even after he received his monthly allowance and a bottle of level E energy restoration elixir and left the Genetic Research Institute. Was it legal to cultivate a human in the incubation chamber of the Institute 14? Was it illegal, if it was humans being cultivated in the incubator of the number 14 Research Institute? Then what kind of research would Xiaozu use them for? Would there be anything bad about these studies? Chapter 77, A New Way to Read. Zhu Tui suddenly realized something even before he returned to the dormitory area. The number 14 Research Institute that Xiaozu was presiding over now belonged to the Genetic Research Institute. What kind of organization was the Genetic Research Institute? It was the scientific research organization that ranked first among the highest genetic committees in every district. The Genetic Research Institute in the capital could be said to be the headquarters of the Waxia Genetic Research Institute. Did Xiaozu think that the leaders of the Waxia Genetic Committee were decorations if she were to conduct any illegal experiments here? Even if the person in the incubation chamber was really a human, it should be legal. At the very least, she should have obtained special permission. Zhu Tui's worries were redundant. His mood instantly became better. Then, Zhu Tui turned toward dormitory area B. Yes, the female dormitory. Zhu Tui bought a fruit basket from the supermarket in area B of his dormitory. He could not express his gratitude empty-handed. "Student, do you want some flowers?" the female senior asked with a smile. "Why do I need flowers?" "A bouquet of flowers is a necessary ritual when you're looking for a girl. You can only bring a fruit basket when you see a patient or an old friend. Why don't you bring along a bunch of flowers or switch to fresh flowers? Do you want to choose the yellow or red roses?" the female attendant asked. "That's no need. A fruit basket would do." Zhu Tui left the supermarket after he rejected the offer. The female attendant shook her head when she saw him. "You can't even see through that. That means that you are already at the end of the stage of straight man cancer." "Gongling, are you in the dormitory?" "I am, little Tui." Gongling was very happy to receive Zhu Tui's call. "I'll be going to your dormitory." "Really, when are you coming over?" "Now, I'm already downstairs." "Ah. Wait a moment. Come up later." Gongling's voice was filled with panic. Zhu Tui was a little hesitant. He had already pressed the button to enter the elevator. He thought about it and decided to get into the elevator. He would wait at the door. Otherwise, he would have to wait a long time to get into the elevator with the female students going up and down. 15:07. Zhu Tui arrived quickly. He could faintly hear Gongling's voice at the door. "Qingqing, hurry up. Take the one by the window and put it away in the washroom. Take mine too. Where's the perfume? Why can't I find my perfume? Where's the air freshener? Linger, my suggestion is that you change your clothes first." "Aren't you going to change?" "He's not my type. Why would I change my clothes? Furthermore, I was born beautiful." Zhu Tui felt a little helpless as he stood at the door and listened to the conversation between the two women. It sounded like girls were very troublesome. Gongling might be changing her clothes. Zhu Tui might see something inappropriate if he sent his mental senses over. It was unethical. His mental senses stirred several times. However, he ultimately held back. He felt that he was a good boy. He waited for 10 minutes. Then he gently knocked on the door. The room became chaotic again. 5 minutes later, Gongling opened the door with a slightly red face. He did not know if it was because she was flustered or something else. "It's the weekend. I was a little lazy and didn't clean up much. I quickly cleaned up a little." "Little Tui, come in and sit." Gongling's dress accentuated her impressive figure. She was extremely voluptuous. Her room was a two-person room. The layout of the room was similar to Zhu Tui. It was clean and tidy. There was a faint fragrance in the air. It smelled extremely good. Zhu Tui greeted Gongling's roommate, Zhao Qingqing, casually. He then sat down on Gongling's chair after Gongling greeted him. "Little Tui, we've been in school for a month. You finally remembered to visit me at my dormitory. Isn't the first 3 months mainly for training? Come if you want in the future. Don't bring anything." Gongling brought over the fruit basket. She suddenly had a surprised expression as she spoke. "Little Tui, how did you know that I love mangoes, grapes, and bananas? All of the things you bought are my favorite." Zhao Qingqing, who was wearing casual clothes and reading a book, rolled her eyes. Zhu Tui rubbed his nose, a little embarrassed. That seemed like a coincidence. He had casually picked up a fruit basket from the supermarket and saw that the colors of the fruits were a little brighter. He really did not know if Gongling liked them or not. "Then I'll continue to buy you those next time." Zhu Tui was smiling, but he could already feel the sweat on his forehead and back. He felt extremely uncomfortable. "So that's the case, Gongling. I didn't thank you for the pearls when I fought Deng Wei last week. I still have 1 pearl left. The other 2 are shattered and cannot be found. How about this? Give me the shop where you bought from and I'll guarantee that I'll return with an identical one." Zhu Tui got straight to the point. He had come to Gongling's dormitory today specifically for this. He had to thank her, then compensate her with pearls. Gongling, who was twisting her fingers together, suddenly froze. She then pointed at Zhao Qingqing and said, little Tui, that pearl belongs to Qingqing. You have to thank her if you want to. It's hers. Zhu Tui was startled. His gaze instantly landed on Zhao Qingqing, who was wearing home clothes and had her hair tied up casually. He had not noticed it before, but now, he was sizing her up. Zhu Tui realized that Gong Ling was not lying. Her roommate was really beautiful, even without makeup. She had a slender neck and an indescribable aura. She was really, really well worth the second look. This, Student Zhao, I really did not know about this. Thank you very, very much for your help that day. Zhu Tui felt a little awkward. He quickly pointed at the fruit basket. It's a token of my appreciation. There are two of us. Why are you carrying a fruit basket? Zhao Qingqing suddenly said. Zhu Tui was speechless. He instantly did not know how to respond. He had an awkward expression. If Cheng Mo dared to say that, he would have told him to get lost. However, he was thanking a girl. Zhu Tui did not know how to respond. Qingqing, you always like to joke around. Come, let's eat together. Gong Ling peeled a grape as fast as she could and fed it to Zhao Qingqing, relieving Zhu Tui of his embarrassment. That, Student Zhao, your 2 pearls have already been shattered. However, I will compensate you. Please send me your item information or the internet address so that I can compensate you, Zhu Tui said. There's no need. I have to. There's really no need. I have to. I'm already extremely grateful that you helped me. I can't let you lose anything else, Zhu Tui said sincerely. Zhao Qingqing glanced at Zhu Tui. Up to you. They added each other's contact details on the spot. Then, Zhao Qingqing sent a link message to Zhu Tui. They chatted awkwardly for a while longer before the matron called him. Zhu Tui left the room. Zhu Tui wiped off the sweat on his palms after he left the dormitory building. Why did he feel that chatting with girls was more tiring than cleaning up? Zhu Tui checked the purchase link Zhao Qingqing sent him along the way. He should pay her back as soon as possible. He did not like owing others. It was a unique website. It was not a common shopping website. Zhu Tui only glanced at the message when he suddenly stopped in his tracks. The Starlight Pearl used the extraterrestrial meteorite powder as its core and was implanted into the body of the pearl. It was naturally natured and only formed after 6 years. Zhao Qingqing's pearl was 7 mm large. Its level was also flawless. Zhu Tui almost fainted when he saw the price listed on the website. 7 mm of glossy level pearls cost $100,000 a pearl, and it needs to be pre-ordered for 5 pearls. A flawless 7 mm glossy level pearl cost $200,000, and an order of 5 pearls took at least half a year. Zhu Tui wanted to curse when he saw the price. Why was his mouth so cheap? Zhao Qingqing had already said that she did not need it. Why did he have to insist? An order for 5 pearls was a massive sum of money. Zhu Tui could not tell that Zhao Qingqing was that rich. There were at least 30 pearls in that pearl necklace. That was $6 million. Even if there was a huge discount on the quantity. Zhu Tui felt that he had dug a hole for himself. What a foul mouth. See what happened. Zhu Tui had told her in the dormitory that he would pay them back as soon as possible. From the looks of it, it would take several years. I should think about how to earn money in the future and return the money slowly. Who knows, I might get a special price sometime. When he returned to the dormitory, he saw that the handsome man in the Hanfu Luo Murong had just returned from outside. Zhu Tui had a thought and quickly stopped Luo Murong. Senior Luo, can you lend me your books? I want to learn about these theories too, Zhu Tui suddenly said. This was not a spur-of-the-moment idea. Instead, it was because Luo Murong had used the ancient martial arts lion roar to break through his mental senses this morning, and after, he was stopped by the Genetic Research Institute. Zhu Tui felt that he had to come into contact with a wider range of knowledge. The school library did not have Luo Murong's books. Even though Luo Murong was very exquisite, he was not stingy at all. I'll give you a list of books later. I'll get you whatever you want to read. You are not allowed to enter my room. Also, there's one more condition that you have to abide by, Luo Murong said. Tell me. I'll definitely do it. Zhu Tui endured it just to get those books. He would have gone all out even if Luo Murong made him do 1 more week of cleaning. You are not allowed to dip your finger in your saliva and flip through the book. You are to dip your finger in a wet tissue and flip through the book. If I notice you dipping your finger in your saliva, you can forget about reading my books ever again, Luo Murong said. This request was something that Zhu Tui had not expected. Don't worry, Senior Luo. I won't dip my finger in my saliva. I'll flip the book with my mind power. This time, it was Luo Murong's turn to be shocked. Flipping through the book with his mind power. It was rather novel, a new way of reading. The first book Zhu Tui wanted was The Theory of the Combination of Martial Arts and Genetic Evolution. The contents of the book immediately attracted Zhu Tui's attention. The genetic evolution era might be the last glory of martial arts, or it might be the beginning of everything. 100 years ago, the so-called martial arts had become a form of performance, and even became the butt of jokes in the wrestling circle. Master Clown walked on the stage and brought laughter and topics to the world. Many martial arts had a mysterious feel to them. It was impossible to master them no matter how hard one tried. Even Master Zhen's decades of training could not compare to a brick. However, in the era of genetic evolution, the mysterious side of the martial arts suddenly disappeared. The martial arts were revived through genetic evolution and started to receive the attention of researchers. Thus, the school of genetic evolution in martial arts appeared. Chapter 78, The Origin of Meditation 1. Zhu Tui immersed himself in the books about genetic ancient martial arts for the next few days. This genetic ancient martial arts had completely opened up a new world for Zhu Tui. He became even more interested when he compared the theories he learned in the Waxia Genetic Evolution College. For example, the genetic ancient lion roar that Luo Murong used to break Zhu Tui's mental senses. Actually, the Waxia Genetic Evolution College also had such an ability. The School of Sound of the Extreme Branch Institute specialized in such an ability. Activating a variety of genetic ability chains that were related to sound could allow a cultivator to release a variety of infrasonic waves, ultrasonic waves, and even supersonic waves. Many of the sound wave genetic abilities had the ability to break mental defenses. However, the prerequisite for obtaining such a genetic ability chain was that one had to activate sound-related genetic base points when they were being administered with the genetic compound chain allele elixir, genetic liberation elixir. Only then could they enter the school of sound to train and activate such a genetic ability chain. Of course, it was not as if the people from the other faculties could not cultivate sound-related genetic ability chains. They could do that. Even though Zhu Tui was from the school of enlightened mind, in theory, he could also cultivate superb-type genetic abilities. However, the direction of the genetic base points he activated when he was administered with the genetic liberation elixir was the direction of his genetic talent ability. It was very difficult for students without sound-related genetic abilities to cultivate sound-related genetic abilities. Doing double the work was a trivial matter, but it might lead to other consequences. Just like how Zhu Tui had temporarily forgotten about the superb type training method after he read it because it was a waste of time. Furthermore, he might not succeed 100% of the time. Getting started was extremely difficult. The threshold was extremely high. However, in the genetic ancient martial arts, such a threshold and difficulty of training seemed to have decreased. As long as he had a way to train in genetic ancient martial arts, he would be able to train across power systems. What does it mean to train across the power systems? For example, in the Extreme Branch Institute, there were the Speed Branch, Power Branch, Vision Branch, Sound Branch, and Neural Branch. Among them, the speed-related and power-related systems were similar. Even the nerve-related systems were somewhat similar. They were all training the fundamental abilities of the body, with a portion or an entire set of physical attributes as the foundation. However, the vision type and sound type systems were different. It had nothing in common with the speed type or power type. This was cross-force training. There was also the School of Enlightened Mind and the School of Superbs in the Mystery Branch Institute. They were also called cross-force training. The School of Enlightened Mind and the School of Radiation Influence had a slight similarity. All speed-type students trained in the nervous system, as well as the strength type. However, most of them did not specialize in the sound type or vision type. However, in the genetic ancient martial arts, this kind of dual cultivation seemed to be very normal. There were no longer obvious distinctions like in the Waxia Genetic Evolution College. For example, his roommate, Luo Murong, was a speed-type student from the Extreme Branch Institute. However, he had powerful sound-related abilities. It was also a rare occurrence in the Waxia Genetic Evolution College. According to the fundamental theories of the Waxia Genetic Evolution College, these were two completely different directions for genetic evolution. Very few people did that. Even if they did, they would not succeed. However, things looked very easy on Luo Murong's side. Zhu Tui did not know how much Luo Murong had sacrificed to train in the genetic ancient martial arts. However, the genetic ancient martial arts piqued his interest. Then, another point of knowledge shocked Zhu Tui even more. The dialectical combination theory of traditional Waxia cultivation and genetic evolution. Zhu Tui's shock came from the book. The book mentioned a few points of knowledge regarding traditional Waxia training. For example, the meditation of Taoists. The meditative state of Buddhism was also called Zen. The meditation of ancient Indian yoga. These points of knowledge were commonly used during discussions 100 years ago, including during the current genetic evolution era. Meditation. That's right, it was the meditation that Zhu Tui did every day. He was shocked. The meditation that his father, Zhu Jianguo, had taught him since he was young had such a background. Zhu Tui could not remember exactly when he started meditating. Ever since he could remember things when he was 6 or 7 years old, Zhu Tui had needed to adjust his breathing, meditate, and relax every night before falling asleep. Zhu Tui remembered that he would always fall asleep during his meditation. At that time, his father, Zhu Jianguo, had emphasized his stance to him. For example, sitting cross-legged. Another example was relaxation, and to empty his mind. Later, when Zhu Tui could relax and empty his mind, the posture became unimportant. He could be in any posture as long as he could meditate. Dad also practiced meditation. Then does my illusory introspection have anything to do with this meditation? Zhu Tui could not stop himself from thinking about that question. He could not suppress his doubts. He quickly called his father, Zhu Jianguo. Why did you remember to call me? Are you lacking money again? No, Dad, so you think I only called you for money. Can't I show some concern for you too? Concern, I like it. Yes, you didn't go to school in vain. You've grown a little. Tell me, how much do you want this time? Zhu Tui was speechless. Dad, I have something that I want to ask you. What's with the meditation that you taught me when I was young? Where did you learn this? Zhu Tui asked. What's the matter? Did it get in your way? No, I suddenly saw a book that had records of this. I wanted to ask you about it. It's nothing. It was taught to me by a teacher when I was in college. He said that it has the effect of calming the mind and enlightening the mind. I practiced it, but I didn't get anything out of it. However, I would become more energetic after training and would recover quickly if I got tired or fell sick occasionally. After that, when your mother had you, she could not sleep the entire night because of her severe morning sickness and anxiety. That scared me. I was afraid that the two of you could not make it. The doctors at the hospital had administered a lot of medication but to no avail. Left without a choice, I taught your mother this meditation. Guess what? Your mother fell asleep. Zhu Jianguo's voice was filled with happiness. And then you were born, and you're a night owl. You were always fooling around. You sure are energetic in the middle of the night, and you won't sleep. Your mother and I will have to work during the day and fool around with you at night. I don't think that we should stay up all night. So I started teaching you. Your mother and I will ask you to watch us meditate before we sleep every day. Who cares if you go up to the sky or roll on the bed? We'll just sit cross-legged and meditate. And you gradually learned from us due to your curiosity. We taught you patiently. Anyway, one day when you were 3, you suddenly fainted. Haha, it turns out you fell asleep. We only did this for half a year. Ever since then, you would fall headlong into a deep sleep just by sitting cross-legged for a short while. Your mother and I only managed to live a happy life after that. Zhu Jianguo laughed loudly on the other end of the line. Zhu Tui felt a little hurt. So he, the son, got in the way of his parents' happy lives. He felt a little redundant. Dad, what's the name of this teacher? Did he say anything else? What's the name? Let me think. Zhu Jianguo was deep in thought on the other end of the line. In the end, he shook his head and said, "I can't remember. It was more than 20 years ago. That teacher was just a teacher in charge of a major class. He only gave us a few public lectures. I can't remember his name." He did not say anything else. "Oh, yes, did something happen to your meditation?" "No, I was just curious when I saw something similar." Zhu Tui was still confused even after he hung up the phone. Did his meditation have anything to do with the dialectical theory of Waxia's traditional training and genetic evolution? Zhu Tui could not make a judgment even after he finished the book. That was because the book, The Dialectical Theory of Waxia's Traditional Training and Genetic Evolution, mentioned the meditation of the Tao, Buddhism, and ancient Indian yoga. However, there was no concrete method of meditation. They were all mentioned in general terms and they all had their own characteristics and differences. Zhu Tui's meditation seemed to touch on every aspect. Zhu Tui's meditation was extremely simple. It was about calming his mind, inhaling through his nose, exhaling through his mouth, and taking long breaths. He could relax his entire body during these long breaths, then empty his mind and quickly enter a meditative state. After I finish reading these books, I have to understand more about genetic ancient martial arts. It would be best if I can communicate with Luo Murong. Zhu Tui came to a decision after he thought about it. July 23, Friday, 5th week after Zhu Tui entered the school. They had a new public lesson today. The curriculum of the first-year students in the Waxia Genetic Evolution College might not be filled immediately after school started. This was especially so for training classes. They followed the progress rate of their training. For example, Wen Xiao started off his lecture with the training of mind power. After that, Wen Xiao had a lecture on actual combat. The rest of the classes were conducted in smaller classes. The public lesson they were going to take today was called reflex training. The lesson plan specifically stated, "This lesson is extremely important. You will also be administered with the elixir on the spot. If there are no important matters, please do not skip the lesson. If you are absent from class, please get permission from the teacher, homeroom teacher, and the department head to receive the supplement." They made it sound so serious so he could not afford to miss this class. Furthermore, the process of catching up on his missed classes was extremely troublesome. Zhu Tui rushed to the public lecture venue early on Friday morning. The lesson was in the Extreme Branch Institute. The location was the Reflexes Training Building. It was not far away. The location was within the Extreme Branch Institute but was very close to the Mystery Branch Institute. Zhu Tui ran into many students from the Extreme Branch Institute along the way. Occasionally, a student would glance at him or point at him. After all, Zhu Tui was a famous student in the Waxia Genetic Evolution College. He was a thorn in the flesh. He was rather well known. However, no one tried to provoke him. After all, not many people were muscle-headed fools like Deng Wei. The students who managed to get into the Waxia Genetic Evolution College through the screenings were all very powerful. The Reflexes Training Building had 8 floors. The second, third, fourth, and fifth floors were public training halls. The sixth, seventh, and eighth floors were multi-purpose independent training halls. They were for individuals, small groups, and teachers. Usage required a student's level assessment or a fee. The first-year students' reflexes training lesson was on the second floor. It was the second floor that occupied the largest area. Even though it was called the second floor, the floor was very high. Furthermore, the floor was made up of stairs in squares. Every student who came to class was given a square. The squares were all 1 square meter in size. They had doors and were enclosed by a 80-centimeter high fence. 4 matrix-shaped laser heads were suspended above every square. There were 1,500 squares. The reflex training lesson was the most popular training course in the Waxia Genetic Evolution College. It was said that everyone had to learn it. It did not matter if they were from the Mystery Branch or the Extreme Branch. They were all mandatory. Thus, classes were arranged in a systematic manner. It was a public lesson for new students from the Extreme Branch and Mystery Branch. Half of the students who were attending this public lesson were from the Mystery Branch, while the other half were from the Extreme Branch. When the bell rang, an agile teacher with a short beard quickly appeared on the elevated platform. This was the professor from the Extreme Branch Institute's School of Neurology, Luo Shifeng. Chapter 79, Speed of Life and Death. Good morning, students. My name is Luo Shifeng, and I am a professor from the Extreme Branch Institute's School of Neurology. I will be giving a public lecture on reflexes. I hope that this year will bring you joy and improvement. Luo Shifeng, who had an exquisite short beard, went straight to the point. 3 points. First, our School of Neurology has a large public class. It has the most students. There are 1,500 students in the class today. There are many people, so I request for absolute silence. I do not want to hear any sounds from your communication devices or whispers. If you do, then please leave. Don't affect the rest of the students' studies. Watch the recording alone after class. Second, unless I ask you a question, if not you can ask me questions after class or during training. Otherwise, there's no way for us to go through this lesson. Third, you will do whatever I tell you to do during the lesson. You have to follow my instructions. If you have any doubts, you can choose not to do it. But you are not allowed to interrupt my lesson. Do you all understand? Yes. The answers from the students were very uniform. Many students even confirmed that they had turned their communication devices off to silent mode. Getting kicked out of class was no joke. Alright, the first thing is to familiarize yourself with your training square. Your studies and training will all be within this square. After explaining the rules of the class, Professor Luo's image in the minds of the students became clear. Serious, strict, requires students to follow the rules and instructions. I believe that many of you have done your research into the subject of reflexes. I won't waste my breath on what you know. I'll only talk about one question. The speed of your reflexes is extremely important. How important is it? For example, the license to drive special equipment and operate special weapons have the lowest requirement of a person's reflexes. The reaction speed of an ordinary person is roughly 0.2 to 0.3 seconds. Students like you generally have a reaction speed of 200 milliseconds to 250 milliseconds. Some of the students who had been through long-term training had reflexes that could reach 100 milliseconds. That was a very fast reaction speed. However, the requirement for the reaction speed of special equipment and special weapons was 10 milliseconds, which is 0.01 seconds. You would not even have the right to obtain the verification if you cannot meet this requirement. That is what you are most interested in. There are also things that you are not interested in or do not want to face. For example, life and death. The speed of our reflexes is also called the speed of life and death. While he was speaking, Professor Luo Shifeng casually took out a high-powered weapon and a hot weapon from the podium. They were both from the miniature charge series. For these two weapons, the initial speed of the plasma and the bullet is 1,500 meters per second and 1,200 meters per second respectively. Who could avoid its gunfire within 10 meters? There's no need to answer. Those who have the confidence, you can stand out. Everyone was silent. No one dared to move. An initial speed of 1,500 meters and a distance of 10 meters were more like suicide. What about 50 meters? Anyone? There was still no one. What about 100 meters? A few students from the Extreme Branch Institute swayed when they heard the 100-meter mark. However, no one stood out. Some had some thoughts, but they did not have the confidence. Alright, if there's no one, I'll demonstrate for you what the speed of life and death is today. Let's start at 10 meters and shoot continuously. Shoot until you run out of bullets. Professor Luo tossed the two guns toward his assistant. He tossed it out as he put on his helmet and bulletproof vest. Under normal circumstances, I don't need that. I have the confidence. However, it's better to be safe than sorry. This is what you should do, and it is what I request for you all to do. Students must wear protective equipment during any training that involves danger in the future, no matter how powerful or confident you are. You only have one life. Otherwise, with just a little interference from an unexpected factor, you would. Professor Luo stood still. A soft screen had risen 50 meters behind the platform. It should be used to intercept the bullets. Let's begin. Almost immediately after he finished speaking, the assistant started to fire his high-powered weapon. There was a constant buzzing sound. The 60 rounds of high-powered plasma that had been shot within a short time formed a screen of light. At first glance, Professor Luo seemed to have been enveloped by the screen of light. Several students let out a cry of surprise, but they still covered their mouths. Almost immediately, the sounds of gunfire from conventional guns rang out. The 45-round magazines were all used up in a few seconds. The bullets once again formed a barrage. Due to their optical illusions, many of them felt that Professor Luo was about to be riddled with holes. However, when the screen of light and bullet screen disappeared, Professor Luo was still standing on the platform, unharmed. Most of the students could not even see how Professor Luo dodged the bullets. "Oh, my hair is a little messy." Professor Luo gently smoothed his hair. The students below the stage were indescribably shocked. In terms of posturing, Professor Luo from the School of Neurology had a perfect score. Do you understand what the speed of life and death is now? No matter how powerful you are, no matter if you are from the extreme branch or the mystery branch, if your reflexes are too poor, you would be sending yourself to death no matter where you go. Your reaction speed is 100 milliseconds, while the enemy's reaction speed is 50 milliseconds. In theory, regardless of the distance, your enemy can kill you 50 times in this 50 milliseconds. On the battlefield, especially in close-range battles or when faced with the attacks of energy weapons and guns, a person would have more chances of surviving as long as they were not covered in bullets and their reflexes were fast enough. Chapter 80, Speed of Life and Death 2. Our reflexes lesson is to train you in the speed of your reflexes. Under normal circumstances, a person's reaction speed could reach 100 milliseconds or even lower through extreme training. However, the difficulty was too great. Furthermore, the ability could not be used in general. In this genetic era, elixirs could greatly reduce the time it took to train our reflexes. The target of our reflexes lesson is 10 milliseconds. If your reflexes do not reach 10 milliseconds a year later, your personal rating would drop by a grade. Zhu Tui's eyes flickered. A year later, if an individual's reflexes were less than 10 milliseconds, their rating would drop by a grade. Out of all of the classes, this was the only one that the students would be demoted if the student did not meet the requirements. The school must have made such a rule to emphasize the importance of a person's reflexes. This matter concerned life and death. The school had already set the rules to this extent. If he did not take them seriously, he could only say that he had holes in his brain. Before we are administered with the nerve acceleration elixir, we would first test out a student's fundamental reflexes and make a record of it so that we can compare it with what we get after the training. Do you see the hole in the matrix laser above your heads? In a while, this matrix laser will shoot out high-frequency sensory lasers, mainly aimed at your heads, including your eyes. It will not cause you any harm, but it will be recorded the moment it hits your skin or eyes. Then upload it to the school's super data center and calculate the speed of your reflexes, which will then feed it back to you. What you need to do is to try your best to dodge these high-frequency sensory lasers. It doesn't matter if you get hit. Just try your best to avoid them. Let me teach you a little trick. Every high-frequency sensory laser had a fixed target. The moment it appeared, the body part that was targeted would experience a slight sensation of weakness. For example, he would have hit the target if you were hit in the area of the forehead. If you managed to avoid being hit in the forehead area and get hit in the ear, that would be you dodging the bullet. It would not be a failure. It's just that your body's speed cannot match up to your reflexes. There will be improvements in the future. Do you all understand? Professor Luo said. Get ready. Zhu Tui immediately became focused. The next instant, he felt an itch at the tip of his nose. A laser beam shot toward him. Zhu Tui did not have the time to react when the tip of his nose felt warm. He was hit. Then, high-frequency sensory lasers continued to rain down on him. Zhu Tui tried his best to avoid them. He even activated his mental senses. However, it was useless. He sensed where it was going to land, but he could not avoid it. His reflexes were not fast enough. He could dodge it by turning his head slightly, but he could not do it. Zhu Tui could not help but be shocked. Wouldn't he instantly become a sieve if he came into contact with the cluster of laser weapons? Then, he would become a medium rare meat. The testing stopped 3 minutes later. Zhu Tui felt that he had only dodged 20% of the laser bullets. He even instinctively tilted his head to the side to avoid most of them. In simpler terms, he had been lucky. He did not dodge the bullet with his reflexes. There was a small electronic screen in front of everyone's cubicle. It immediately displayed everyone's reaction speed. Zhu Tui's reaction speed was 180 milliseconds, 0.18 seconds. The same went for the rest of the students. Only a few students from the extreme branch had a reaction speed of 130 milliseconds. Most of the students had a reaction speed of 150 to 250. There were not many students who scored above 200 milliseconds. The genetic liberation elixir enhanced a person's fundamental qualities to a certain extent. Alright, the students now have a basic understanding of their reflexes. It can be said that with your current reaction speed, you would be able to be wiped out with a gun. Without further ado, we'll be distributing the genetic speed acceleration elixirs. Administer the elixir under your skin yourself. Your reflexes would be enhanced several times over for the next 3 hours after the injection. At this time, your reflexes would be the most effective during training. It would directly trigger a few genetic base points relating to the speed of your reflexes. Accumulated high-intensity training will allow you to activate genetic base points relating to your reaction speed. It will greatly enhance your reaction speed. Also, the peak time for the effects of the nerve acceleration elixir was 1.5 hours. It would start to weaken after that. It will decrease by 80% after 3 hours. The remaining 20% of the effects would be completely digested within 5 days. You can also continue to train your reflexes during these 5 days. As such, our reflex training course is held once a week. Please remember this, students. Also, there would be some side effects after being administered with the nerve acceleration elixir. The effects varied from person to person. For example, insomnia, anxiety, sensitivity, temper, irritability, decreased appetite, etc. However, the effects are not serious. Please try your best to overcome them, Professor Luo Shifeng explained. While he was speaking, an assistant had already brought several students and quickly distributed the nerve acceleration elixirs. It was a red disposable elixir. You guys got the nerve acceleration elixirs, right? Professor Luo suddenly laughed. In our class, we only have motivation if there is competition. Well, during these 3 hours, whichever one of you has a reaction speed of more than 50 milliseconds will have these 3 bottles of level E energy restoration elixirs. There will only be one prize. The person whose reaction speed has increased the most will take it. With a smile, Professor Luo Shifeng placed 3 bottles of level E energy restoration elixirs on the table. Many students turned their gazes toward the prize. They had been in the school for more than a month. They would be a coward if they did not know the importance of the level E energy restoration elixir. Only with this can they continue to train and improve themselves. Otherwise, they could only slowly eat and sleep to recover their energy after they expended all of it in an hour of extreme training. 3 bottles were enough to last many students 3 to 4 days. Zhu Tui's gaze was also very fervent. 3 bottles of level E energy restoration elixirs were a substantial amount. However, would he be able to increase his reaction speed by 50 milliseconds or even more within 3 hours? Professor Luo Shifeng was very happy when he saw the reactions of the 1,000-odd students. This was a method that he liked to use. He would give a reward that would tempt any student. Then, they would set a goal that the students thought they could achieve but could not. Finally, Professor Luo became elated when he saw how his students could not get the reward no matter how hard they tried. As a teacher, it was very boring to have to repeat the contents of an entire lesson. It was like eating the same bowl of noodles every day. You would get tired of it no matter how delicious it was. It also meant that behind every goddess, there was a man who slept with her until he vomited. Of course, that was Professor Luo Shifeng's theory. It was one of the few things that Professor Luo Shifeng enjoyed when he was constantly teaching reflexes classes.